So, yeah.
Recording in progress.
Just to check, Maureen, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. All right. Good evening and welcome to our May 9th regular meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners. I'm Mayor John Higdon. We had an earlier meeting at 5:30 to discuss our fiscal year 23 budget. I'd like to start with some introductions. Tonight we have Commissioner Renee Garner, Commissioner Larry Whitley, Mayor Pro Tem Ken McCool, Town Manager Becky Hawk, our Town Attorney Charlie Buckley, Commissioner Mark DeFano, Commissioner Gina Hoover, Commissioner John Urban, our Town Clerk Lori Canapino, our Planning Director Jay Camp, and our Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith. I am not in Matthews tonight. I have the privilege of being in Colorado Springs, Colorado this evening. And I'll preface the beginning of this meeting by saying that if I run into some technical issues, I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Ken McCool to take over the meeting. I have had some Wi-Fi issues here. We'll start tonight with the invocation. Mayor Pro Tem Ken McCool.
For those who choose to pray, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we invite you to watch over this meeting. Even though we may have different opinions, give us unity of spirit. Help us to listen to others as they share their points of view, and help us work as a united group as we make decisions on behalf of our great town. Help us work as a whole rather than individuals trying to promote their own agendas. May we have the spirit of camaraderie in this room and work together on our shared mission. And Lord, I also ask for your healing grace for former town employee Mary Jo Gallnitz, who is at home battling illness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem McCool. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I'd like to read a proclamation for National Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, emergency management, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the town of Matthews. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, federally mandated first responders, and the engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector were responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the town of Matthews to gain knowledge of and to maintain ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their community. And whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, now therefore I, the Honorable John F. Higdon, Mayor of the town of Matthews, do hereby designate the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week. And I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the Great Seal of the town of Matthews, North Carolina, to be affixed this 9th day of May, 2022. And I'd like to ask Mayor Pro Tem Ken McCool to take a photograph with Life Fitzpatrick, who will be accepting this proclamation. Life, would you like to say a few words?
McCool, members of the board, on behalf of the members of Public Works, our staff, we really appreciate the recognition. I will definitely bring this back and relay this to them. But as always, we do always appreciate your support and everything you do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Life. And now we're going to have another proclamation honoring National Police Week and Police Officers Memorial Day. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Town of Matthews Police Department and area agencies. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agencies serving the Town of Matthews, including the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, North Carolina Alcohol Law Enforcement, Mecklenburg County Alcohol Beverage Control, and the Town of Matthews Police Department, play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the Town of Matthews. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agencies, and that members of our law enforcement agencies recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, more than 23,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. The names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas 619 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 472 officers killed in 2021 and 147 officers killed in previous years. And whereas a candlelight vigil honoring this service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during National Police Week, which will be observed this year from May 11th through the 17th, and Peace Officers Memorial Day, which will be observed on May 15th. Now, therefore, the Matthews Board of Commissioners calls upon all citizens of the Town of Matthews and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 11th through 17th, 2022 as National Police Week, to commemorate law enforcement officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens, and to observe May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or become disabled in the performance of duty. Let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the Town of Matthews to be affixed this 9th day of May, 2022. And again, I'd like to ask Mayor Pro Tem to take a photograph with Chief Bennington, please.
I assume you're going to ask me to say a couple of words, Mayor?
Absolutely.
Pass up a microphone. First off, thank you guys very much for the recognition. As stated in the proclamation, the number of lives lost over the last few years is devastating. I would also like to remind that there is a Peace Officer Memorial wreath laying in Mecklenburg County on Friday at 0900, and there will be a Peace Officer Memorial service at the First Baptist Church in Charlotte, and I am honored this year to be giving the roll call of honor during that service. So thank you for your support.
All right, thank you, Chief. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 6. Do we have any items to be added to the agenda, Town Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Becky. So now we're going to go on to the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone who is registered in advance will be able to speak first, and after that, anyone in the audience who wishes to speak may do also. So we'll start with that. I understand that we do have one person signed up. Lori?
Yes, Robert Meyer, if you can come up to the podium.
You'll have 4 minutes to speak, sir.
Okay, so we'll take that. Good evening. My name is Robert Meyer. I own property in Matthews. I want to speak to you tonight about the text amendment 2022-01 that you have in tonight's agenda. This purpose is to allow for a limited amount of outdoor storage under prescribed conditions in I-1 districts. My concern about this is there are several properties affected in the downtown overlay district. Generally, I'm very pro-business and appreciate that this has been done to allow and encourage business development in Matthews. However, I feel it's wrong to allow this in the downtown overlay district. By allowing this change in the overlay district, you start to erode the concept of that was carefully thought out and implemented. Once a precedent such as this is recommended and is set, it then becomes harder to maintain the concept. You then start down the slippery slope of adopting incremental changes. It's worth noting that even though staff has recommended this change, it specifically notes that this is a direct conflict with the downtown overlay district. I would recommend that the text amendment be modified to allow the I-1 use of outdoor storage, to not allow the use of outdoor storage in downtown overlay district. Okay. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Those that are watching our meeting on Zoom can also speak if they wish. Those in the Zoom audience can use Zoom's raise hand feature. If you're on a desktop or mobile device, click the raise hand in the webinar controls and you'll be recognized by the name listed in your Zoom window. Or if you've joined by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and you'll be recognized by your telephone number. Maureen, do we have anybody that's indicating they'd like to speak?
No, we do not.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to recess our regular meeting for public hearings.
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ken McCool. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Whitley. All in favor? Any opposed? I, Mayor Higdon, vote in the affirmative, so that passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item 8A, the town's intent to enter into a seller financing agreement for the purchase of real property located at 137 South Fremont Street.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. Would you like me to handle this?
I'm sorry, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. What we have in front of us tonight is a public hearing on the acquisition of real property located at 137 South Fremont Street, and the opportunity for the board to enter into a financing payment plan for acquisition of that property.
Does anybody want to speak for or against this proposal?
Okay,
Our town attorney is asking us to reflect the terms of the proposed sale for the record. So this property would be purchased for $800,000 as a principal purchase price. And the payment schedule is up there on the screen, but we would be looking at a $20,000 down payment at the closing date, which we expect to occur in May of this year. And then the following 4 years, beginning on July 15th of 2023 and concluding on July 15th of 2026, would be an annual payment of $207,000 and $207,338,000 annually, for a total cost with interest of $849,352.
all right. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing and hearing none, we can move on to the next one. Application to amend the Unified Development Ordinance and Land Use Map of the Town of Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually going to be a quick one. The applicant in this case is actually waiting for the outcome of the text amendment that's to allow the limited outdoor storage in the I-1 zoning district. So they're requesting to postpone the hearing or to open the hearing and continue it until the June meeting, once they know what the outcome of that is.
Okay, do we need to take a vote on that? Yes. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Sorry, Mayor, that's a yes on taking a vote.
Yes. Okay, would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we open the public hearing and continue it to June 13th, 2022. This is in reference to the Lefkis Properties 2022-750.
And I'll second that.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Tufano.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Tufano. All in favor? Any opposed? I vote affirmative. That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Jay, were you going to introduce the planning board members?
Yes, Mayor. Sorry, we skipped over that part. Here for planning board this evening, and everybody's kind of sitting in different places than normal. On our front row, we've got our chair, Mike Foster. Third row in the middle here, Tom Dorsey. Is there anybody else from planning board I'm missing? Sarah Walker, I'm sorry. The next to last row. Also with us remotely, our vice chair, Natasha Edwards, Jonathan Clayton, Jim Johnson, Howie Labner, and Doug Rose. Thank you.
Okay. And again, we are very thankful for all the hard work that our planning board does. The first zoning application we have tonight is 2022-750, the Lefkis Properties, to change the zoning from I-1 to I-2 CD, and that certain property designated as 552 West Charles Street and further designated as tax parcel 193-251-49. So Ms. Bennett, are you going to handle this one?
That's the one that we just did.
Mayor, that's the one that we just continued, took a vote and continued that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Application next is 2022-753, the Margolin at Matthew.
I'm sorry. Yes, okay. The next one, to change the zoning from R15 to RVS and that certain property designated as 1748 Margolin Drive and further designated as tax parcel 215-091-06. Mr. Hallman.
One second, Mayor. Okay. All right. Thank you. So this is rezoning application 2022-753. This is R15 to RVS. The location of the property is at 1748 Margolin Drive. Ownership is the Leon Levine Foundation. And the applicant is Tri Point Homes. The existing zoning is R15. The proposed zoning is RVS, residential varied styled. Currently, the property is vacant, and the proposed use is a single-family attached subdivision or townhomes. The applicant is requesting changing the property and constructing townhomes up to 79 units. This property is located near the 74-485 interchange. About 1/3 of the property does butt up against it, and then the rest of the property is right up against Margolin Drive. This is near the Royal Park 55+ apartment community, Slavic Baptist Church, Matthews Point Apartments, Alexander Ridge subdivision is across the street. And Then there is some RVS in the area as well. There is Harmony at Matthews on the other side of 45, and then back up across from Butler, just out of view, Butler High School, just out of view, is Bellicera. And then this is a bird's eye view of the property. As you can see, it is vacant. Mostly trees on site right now. Along the 4574 ramp, there is a Duke Energy power easement or right of way. And that extends the entire length of the property. From the street, on the right side of the screen shows the property in question. Directly in front of it, there is also other utilities in the right of way, such as above ground power lines and potentially some type of water or sewer with the fire hydrant placement. The property is about 13.83 acres. There are no streams or swim buffers on site. Again, 2/3 of the property are butt up against the right of way. The adjoining property is the Slavic Baptist Church. This is the proposed site plan. The only means of egress or ingress to the site will be from Margolin Road. There will be 79 units. I think the max or the largest townhome unit is about 6 units. And there's a few 4 and 5 units in there as well. And what is proposed will be public streets with parking on one side. Then we have proposed building elevations attached to the conditional zoning as well. What's shown on screen now is for the front or rear load homes. This is what will be directly in front of Margolin Drive. So this would be what's seen from the current right of way. These are alternates for the front load homes. These will be found internally in the site. Conditions for the zoning that are site specific, limited to 79 or one family attached. They are providing a 10-foot multi-use path to be located along Margolin Drive. The architectural elevations limited to the drawings. The primary exterior will be brick, stone, and cementous siding. Vinyl or similar will be used on the windows, garage doors, sofas, trim, and railing, but it will not be allowed as a primary exterior. And then screening will be installed in between the townhomes and the church next door. They're also requesting flexible design standards. This will be to our minimum lot area, our minimum lot width, and our minimum rear yards. The minimum lot area will be reduced from 3,000 down to 2,300. Our minimum lot widths from 30 feet to 22 feet. And then the minimum rear yards will be decreased from 20 feet to 15 feet. The town's land use plan does make note of this. The property is located in the US 7445 interchange. Overall, the land use plan for this area calls for mixed use development with higher density projects being located near commercial areas or any type of transit oriented development. For example, on the other side of 74 from this project, we do have our ENT district and the sportsplex. The land use area for this, or the land use plan for this area does talk about scaling out. So as we go from the denser developments back down to like the single family detached homes, it does note that it should, or density should decrease as it goes back to the residential areas. Some actionable items. Low-density residential development should be discouraged in this area and other non-destination uses. Sorry, I was having trouble reading it now. Word is a little blurry. Use a, yeah, you can zoom in. Tiered. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Use of a tiered development strategy. So that's what I was discussing, like going from the higher mid-rise units back, or scaling like the apartments and then scaling those back down so that they just kind of flow into the single family detached homes. And then our land use plan does call for residential uses to provide for a variety of housing styles, densities, and locations, promote cottage neighborhood infill development or RVS development where new housing is proposed, and require clustering of developments so that we're able to preserve usable land or green space. We went back instead of forward. Some of the staff comments and outstanding issues. So from the planning department, we're still waiting on a stormwater concept approval plan to be submitted and approved by Mecklenburg County. That will be a requirement before the board, or before decision night for the board. In addition, the TIA is still in the finalization. I believe I saw a few email comments coming through earlier this week. As of right now, the TIA, transit impact analysis, did recommend installing 2 pedestrian crosswalks across Margolin Drive from the development. It's my understanding that the Transportation Advisory Committee also voted on that and did also voted to recommend those 2 crosswalks as well. The exact determination would be figured out or determined by the town, Public Works, and NCDOT at a later date. Staff does like the idea for single family attached on this site. As I mentioned earlier, we do have apartments back towards Matthews Mint Hill Road. And so it would provide for a nice transition in that area back towards the single family detached homes like over on Alexander Ridge and even the church site adjacent to it. However, staff would recommend for the applicant to look at maybe some type of alternative layout for the site. We do have flexible design standards. Right now they're requesting 3. We do allow for, there's about 15 things that you can request design standards from. And the real goal of that would be with the RVS district, the purpose is kind of thoughtful or imaginative design for the site plan and the site layout. And so we'd really like to see maybe a little bit of clustering of the townhomes. That way we're able to provide more amenities for the residents on the lot without actually increasing the density of the lot. And then I did make a note about the CMS impact study or impact statement. I actually received that this morning. According to CMS, this development as proposed would add about 13 students. It'd be an additional 5 students for Bain Elementary, 2 students for Mint Hill Middle, and 6 students for Butler High School. The fire department did make a note for limiting on-street parking to one side for the townhome developments, and then just consulting with them on any of the hydrant locations on site. And then Public Works made a few comments about dedicating space for on the back of the sidewalk looking at dedicating right of way to flatten the curve on Margolin. There's a rather sharp curve right there at the peak across from Alexander Ridge Church. Looking at pedestrian crossings internally as needed in the site, and then thank you. And potential LTL for safety at a new public street pending the outcome of a further crash analysis that is being reviewed by the TIA consultant and our public works, our town engineer, Susan. That concludes the staff update or staff report.
Darren, could you go back to where the elevations were?
So these are,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, these are the front load elevations. So this would be the garage in the front yard. Were you wanting to see these or the rear load elevations?
Well, I guess that's the question, these are the ones I wanted to see. So the actual entrance of the garage is adjacent to the front of the home. These don't stick out from the home, correct? I think Commissioner Urban, you probably know what I'm talking about. They're not the snout houses.
It looks to me like the garages are proud of the front doors. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but not by a great amount.
No.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification on that. Are there? I'm sorry.
I have a question on where I guess the townhomes that would be backing up to the off ramp from 485, is there going to be some sort of sound barrier there? Or is that normal to have a sound barrier? I could imagine it'd be pretty loud for those homes.
I'll save that question for the applicant. I believe they were going to make a short presentation here shortly. But to my knowledge, I'm not sure if there's a sound barrier in that area. I do believe it sits up above 485 though. I could be mistaken on that though.
Are there any other questions for Darren from the elected officials? And Ken, I'd like to ask you to recognize anybody from the planning board that may have a question. Not any? Okay, is Mr. Carmichael going to give a presentation? Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Town Board of Commissioners and the Planning Board. I'm John Carmichael. I'm pleased to be here with representatives of Tri Point Homes, representing them in connection with this rezoning request. With me tonight are Margaret Puckett of Tri Point Homes, Matt Sinkovitz of BGE. Matt's the engineer. His firm prepared the plans that we'll share with you shortly. And then this is Nick Burns of Impact Designs. Nick is the traffic engineer that's prepared the traffic study. Once again, they'll address you shortly. The site, as Darren said, contains just under 14 acres. It's about 13.83 acres. It's located on the south side of Morgland Drive. Immediately to the south of the site is an off-ramp for I-45. To the west of the site is the Royal Park of Matthews Rehabilitation and Retirement Community. And single-family homes are located. There's those homes and homes here, and there's single-family homes to the north of the site as well. And this is a zoomed-in aerial if we need to refer to it. Once again, this is the retirement community over here to the west. The site is currently zone R15. The Slavic Baptist Church is also zone R15. The parcels to the north are zone R12. It's the darker green. You've got an R12 piece of zone property there. This parcel is zoned R20, and then the Royal Park facility is zoned RICD. So as Mr. Hallman stated, the applicant is requesting that the site be rezoned from R15 to RVS to accommodate the development of a residential community on the site that would contain up to 79 townhome units. Before I'm gonna ask Margaret to talk about Tri-Point Homes, to review the site plan and the elevations, but I do want to comment on the land use plan briefly. As you understood from Darren's presentation, the planning staff has concluded that the proposal is generally consistent with the land use plan. It would add to this development, would add to and enhance the range and variety of housing styles in the town of Matthews. There's language in the land use plan about the RVS zoning district being an ideal development opportunity for land that presents environmental challenges due to the proximity of heavily used roads. As you know, the site's in close proximity to 74 and to I-45. This is a medium density residential community, or it would be 5.73 dwelling units per acre. We do feel like it's a good transition from the interstate to the south, from Royal Park to the west, and then from the institutional use, which is the church, a good transitional use back to the single family to the north. So we also feel like this is in keeping with the recommendations of your land use plan and furthers the vision of that plan. But I'm going to ask Margaret to address the board now, and then we're happy to answer any questions after our team presents. I would like to say that on the we have talked to Mr. Hallman about some revisions to the plan that he mentioned to you, and utilizing some additional flexible design standards. So we're going to endeavor to do that this week and turn in a revised plan by next Monday so that it can be considered by the planning board in about 15 days. And then in terms of the public works comments, Nick and Matt are going to address those shortly. Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of Matthews Town staff, and members of the public. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Margaret Pickett. I'm Vice President of Land Acquisition for Tri-Point Homes. Tri-Point is a for-sale residential builder. We'll run through a presentation, show you some of the things that we've built here in the Carolinas, as well as some of the things across the country, to give you a little bit of a feel of what type of product we build. Love a good story. Here's ours. Tri-Point is actually located and headquartered out of Irvine, California. About 3 years ago, the company decided to move east. Started the Charlotte division about 3 years ago, and I've had the honor of running all of our land acquisition activities since the beginning of time here in Charlotte. We've been very successful in local municipalities because of our mentality with local home building and local home design. We're really interested in working with local municipalities to find and fit with the local area. Home building is very local. You can't necessarily pull things off of a shelf and build them in every place the exact same way every time. And we really do value that. We get creative with our home design. Our mission is simple. We're a life-changing business dedicated to designing homes, neighborhoods, and experiences that inspire and uplift our customers, our team members, and the communities that we serve. Life that inspires homes, homes that inspire life. It's our toughest mission and highest calling. This is a part that I take really seriously. In my role, I have the ability to purchase land for a home builder. And at the end of the day, it's families that get to move into these homes. It's parents that are bringing home a newborn baby. It's those same parents sending that child off to college. So when you think of a home, it really is that to us. And we really do get to tie to the emotion that ties to home building and what we do. Our local design capabilities, talking about that and building homes across the country, you can see the elevations that we build in Southern California or in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is on the bottom left-hand corner, are very different than what we would build in Matthews, North Carolina. But taking that local design, figuring out, well, what does a local consumer here want? What are the local commissioners? What is the feedback we're receiving from the public, and how can we incorporate that into our design? Interior design, more so than ever, I think this is so important. so many folks are working from home still, or they've got homeschooling kids or whatever it be. So creating niches inside of your home that actually cater to how your family lives is what our job is. It's a really cool process that we run. We run design charrettes where we actually bring in consumers. We bring in folks that are on the planning board, commissions, and we actually ask for input. Well, how would you use this space? How can we make it better? And that's what we're all about. And that's really the fun part of our job. We have a design center in Waverly off of Providence Road where all of our homeowners have the opportunity to come through and pick their fit and finish. It's very overwhelming in there. There's so many tile options and hardware options, all these things that the homeowner can pick and choose. Our site plan, members of Matthews Town staff have always joked with us that this is the Dorito shaped or the pizza pie shaped parcel in Matthews. I can see why they joke about that, but the project is very triangular in nature and it is up against the 485 on-ramp. We talked, I don't know if this turned off, okay. We talked about the on-ramp and just the adjacency, and Ken, you were asking questions about what that would feel like. We actually, in the initial site planning process, we had our units backing up. So the rears were actually facing 485. We intentionally flipped things around. So the driveways now are fronting and you actually have on-street parking. We created a little bit of buffer with the street in addition to the landscaping buffer and the existing trees that are going to remain. The intent was, to keep our homeowners from having that nuisance of noise on 485. We also have incorporated pocket parks in this community and talking to town staff and Board of Commissioners as well. A centralized pocket park was something that was requested. We've incorporated that into the site plan right in the middle here. I think the big change that we've made and incorporated after feedback from staff and feedback from commissioners, we actually flipped our units here and we were providing now alley load units at front Marjolin Drive. We've incorporated a 10-foot walking trail and a walking path along Marjolin Drive. In addition, we've created and reached out to the Slavic Baptist Church. They had reached out to us during the community meeting and expressed concerns with privacy and homes backing up to the church. It's a very popular congregation. The Google Earth normally actually has this parking lot is full on a Sunday. But they had reached out and expressed we would like to see some sort of shielding from the residents that are going to back up. And we're in conversations committed to fencing, and we've given them the grade to have them understand what our townhomes will look like compared to the existing church. And so far, the conversations have been very positive. I don't know if they're here this evening, but I think that they would agree that we've been good neighbors thus far in the conversation. There are 53, I believe, on-site or on-street parking spaces incorporated into our plan. In addition to our units are actually 2-car and 2-car driveway. So technically 4 cars could be parked on each unit in addition to 53 parking spaces. Our elevations are quite small on this screen, but we've included variation, both front and alley load elevations. These elevations actually do incorporate hardy siding and some of the architectural features that were requested in conversations with commissioners. I think the cool takeaway here, our garage doors are somewhat modern in nature and they have glass windows along the left-hand side. They're all kind of consistent, but they're definitely different than your traditional garage door that has horizontal windows. These are vertical on one side. It's kind of a unique garage door. The product that you see up on the left-hand corner here, that's going to front Marjolin. Those homes actually incorporate about a 6-foot courtyard into the front. Since the homeowner won't have necessarily backyard space, we find it really important that they have outdoor space of some sort. We actually do put a little courtyard fence around that product type. And if you have a small child or a dog or anything of that you can actually use that space on the front of your home, not only a porch, but it's actually usable, which is really important if you don't have that outdoor space in the rear of your home. And again, this kind of depicts those garage doors a little bit better. You can see some of these architectural elements that we're incorporating, brick and stone that wrap the garages. We've included partitions for privacy for these homeowners that have front load garages. These are some side elevations, different color variations. And then these are those alley road, so you can get a feel for those courtyards that I was describing with about a 6-foot courtyard space. And then you can see that they're consistent from the rears. Rear elevations and side elevations. In conversation I've mentioned to the church next door, but we've had conversations with the church to describe what that elevation difference would be. We've proposed a fence along our property line. There's an existing retaining wall on the church side of the property. We're proposing another small retaining wall, and we're in conversations about which trees will be saved and which trees potentially will be replanted in that replanting in that perimeter. I would like to provide just a small housing update in the U.S., just globally across the country, and then specifically here in North Carolina and Charlotte in general. Homes built in the United States by decade. You can see that this chart goes back to 1930, and it shows all of the homes built dating from 1930 to this segment right here is 2010 to 2019. As we all know, there was a major market crash in 2008, 2009. But up until then, we were really on a trajectory and building enough homes for people in this country. What you can see has happened in the last decade is truly reactionary from that market crash. But what is going on in the market right now is there's not enough housing for people. And that's why there's rising prices the way that they've risen. There's so much demand with a millennial buyer and Generation Z. There's just been that buildup, and we really do need housing types of all sorts, price points of all sorts, townhomes, single family, detached. But I always like to show this because it really does tell that we do have a housing crisis in this country, whether it be here locally or across the board. And in Matthews specifically, I pulled inventory on Friday, and there's only 12 new construction homes available right now, active in MLS. One townhome listed at $430 if you wanted to buy a new one today that you could move into, or this was on Friday, so probably not anymore. And there were 11 listings on the new construction side, and I think the average of those listings, I pulled it because it's not visible there, was $658. On the resale side, the story is really similar. Average listing was for a townhome, $380,000, built in 1999. There was only one listing. Total resale, if you included the single family, the average price for a resale single family was six. I had flip-flopped. So the average new construction for a single family home was $690, and the average resale single family was $642, built in 1996. The homes that we're proposing at Margeland are going to be ranged from 1,900 square feet to about 2,100 square feet, and will be in the mid 400s, serving really 3 to 4 bedrooms, family buyer potentially, or young singles and couples, but will fit into the price point that really is, you can see, is somewhat underserved in Matthews at this point and where we are in the cycle. I'm going to pass on my presentation at this point to our engineering team, and we'll be available to answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, Commissioner, staff. My name is Matt Singovitz. I'm with BGE, civil engineer and planner on this project that we have here. So one of the things we want to do is go through the public works comments that Darren had identified earlier, and just speak to those. So the first one being dedicate right away. It's a 1 foot back of sidewalk. The original plan that we had submitted did not clearly identify this or incorporate this. So on the most recent plan, we're showing that now. And if we need to go back to the site plan, we can. So the second bullet point there, as far as dedicating right away to flatten the curve, we're going to come back to that one for the moment. So I'll skip down and go to the providing verification that all curves meet the Mecklenburg County Land Development Standards Manual. So, and again, our original plan, we probably didn't clearly identify that, but in the latest plan, we can say that we do meet the minimum for the standards. The pedestrian crossings internal to the site need to be in line with the sidewalk. And again, referencing the original plan versus now, that's something we have revised so that it is clearly identified. Let's see here. And then I'm gonna actually turn it over to Nick Burns with impact regarding the last bullet point, and then I'll come back myself and again talk about the second bullet point.
Good evening, Nick Burns with Impact Designs. We did the traffic analysis on this site. And so this comment is an interesting comment. So usually when we work with NCDOT and town staff, we look at a capacity analysis, how for a 2-lane road, how much traffic can get through. And when you look at left turn lanes, you usually look at how much traffic is turning across opposing traffic. And so for this site, we only have 3 lefts in the morning, 9 lefts in the PM. So a turn lane isn't needed, but working with Susan and Rob, Susan always asked me great questions. And so this came out of a crash analysis. So the town got us their data for crashes, from Margolin at Matthews Mint to Margolin at Harmony. And, when their data was basically was based on police reports. So it was hard to tell where exactly they were. And so when we did our first draft, we hadn't got the NCDOT data back. And so Susan had asked, was there crashes along the straightaway where the proposed access point is going to be, where a left turn lane may help any crashes. So since then, since the first report, we got the NCDOT data back in, and they have the crashes. They kind of have Margolin spaced out on, kind of broken up into tenths. And you can see where along Margolin those crashes are. And so there aren't actually any or a high concentration. I don't even think there was any, maybe one along that straightaway where the site drive is coming in. And so that'll be in our next report to where there isn't a safety challenge in that area where it would need a left turn lane. So that's kind of addresses that one. Yeah, and that's from a capacity and the safety standpoint. NCDOT agreed that the left turn lane wasn't warranted in their conversations back to us.
All right, thanks, Nick. All right, so jumping back to the dedicating right away as needed to sharpen, to flatten the sharp curve, Margolin Drive, and then widen the pavement, setting the curb line to a future alignment. So as Margaret had indicated earlier, the curve, well, I shouldn't say this, the curve along Margolin Drive, we know is a concern for all of the residents in this area, the owners of the property, town staff, the Slavic Baptist Church adjacent to us to the east there. And as Margaret stated earlier, Tri Pointe's goal is to improve the community in which they serve. And now what we're going to show you is some imagery or some still shots about how our improvements for this particular project will improve the curve coming from, so we'll go next here. All right, so this is if you're standing along Margolin Drive going westbound. So the site is to the left. Alexander Ridge Road is in front of you. So on the left, we have the existing conditions today. And as you're approaching it, you can kind of see a little bit in the background the proposed conditions. So as a part of our project, the improvements we'll have to make along Margolin Drive, just in and of itself with the project, we'll have to do some clearing and some grading, introducing the side path that Margaret had mentioned along Margolin. It's really going to enhance and improve the sightlines as you come around the corner, really from both directions, the eastbound and westbound. So, and create better visibility. So I'll go to the next one here. So this is, as you continue along Margolin, you can kind of see the comparison of the existing conditions on the left again, and the proposed conditions on the right. You can kind of see as you get right to the curve there, with the improvements that we are proposing, there'll be a lot of clearing that will need to be done. We'll have to do some grading and improve this area. That's certainly one of the challenges of the corner. Sightlines will significantly improve from both directions. So this is at the intersection. And again, these are renderings, kind of just trying to show the potential for what could be the site could look like after development. This is at the intersection of Margolin Drive and Alexander Ridge Road. And again, with the existing conditions today and the proposed conditions on the right there. As you continue along Margolin Drive, as you approach the entrance to the development, this is kind of as again, driving westbound along Margolin. Same thing existing on the left and proposed on the right. Pulling it back a little bit, again, with a comparison of what is out there today compared to this particular community, really enhancing the visibility along Margolin Drive, the aesthetics. You can kind of see the proposed sidewalk there, and then these particular units are the rear loaded units. So they'll be fronting Margolin Drive, as Margaret had pointed out earlier with the elevations. And to kind of bring all that together, we have prepared a video, a rendered video, as if you're driving along Margolin Drive to further enhance kind of what we're proposing this to look like. So you can see coming from westbound along Margolin with our flight path. Yeah, correct. Sorry, this is the existing site conditions right now. Alexander Ridge on the right. The proposed project site continues to stay on your left. So now we'll do the same video, but with the after the community would be in place. So you can kind of already tell the improvement on this corner, opening up the sight lines, the visibility as you're approaching the corner from both directions. You can see the units facing Margolin. Pedestrians utilizing the path along the frontage there. And then the proposed site entrance. I'll turn it back over to John.
Thank you. Once again, that was just to illustrate the impact on the enhancement of the visibility around that curve if the project were built. But you've been patient with us, and I know that we've taken a lot of time, and we're happy to answer questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Are there any questions, Commissioner
Yes, I
Tafano?
do. I have questions.
Commissioner
The
Tafano.
average footprint of both your front loaded and rear loaded is approximately 1,425 square feet.
The square footage?
Of the footprint.
Of the
Yeah.
footprint.
What is the living space of that, but both the front and rear loaded?
The living square footage of these units, the front loads will be about 1,900 to 2,100 square feet. And the alley load or the rear loaded units will be a little smaller. They'll be 17 to about 1,900 square feet.
And the price point on both?
we're going to be in the low fours into the mid fours on these units.
Okay, in the one-on-one presentations or group presentations to the commissioners, I expressly asked for that entire center triangle to be opened up to be a park area. And as a matter of fact, you even put more houses in there after my request. I'm just going to be very honest with you. This when I first saw this, it actually depresses me. You know, it's the point where the mediocrity of the construction and architecture and the amount of homes that you're putting into this area at that price point is with very little quality of life in the green space allowed to the community. It just depresses me.
I also have a comment. I too am disappointed. You did a presentation showing some of the single family homes that look good. And to be honest, this is pretty unattractive compared to that. And so you're coming at us with a price point in the mid fours, and it's an unattractive product compared to what you've shown us you've done in other communities. I'm not sure if that is a lack of thought or just what you guys usually do, but I'd like to see it be more attractive. And then along Margolin, it definitely is walls of homes. It looks like you're driving past just big walls of buildings, which is also not a great look from the street, at least what you showed in the flyover. So disappointed in those aspects of the project.
Thank you.
Are there other comments from elected officials? Are there other comments from elected officials? Commissioner Garner, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a few comments I'd like to make, Mayor.
Sure.
I agree with both Commissioners Tofano and McCool. The architecture is uninteresting, even with the modern garage doors, and I'm maybe setting the stage for Commissioner Urban to make some comments too. But touching on what the planning department said, and there's a quote in there, or just a sentence about the substantial protection of the environment. Moving into a video where you say you're opening up the space, essentially is the loss of trees creates your sight line. It doesn't seem to have this particular plan does not have substantial protection of the environment when you're including a few pocket parks. The density to me looks like you're capitalizing on some of the dwindling vacant space in Matthews. To get a grasp on some of the rezonings that we're doing, we have over 2,000 proposed units in Matthews coming on the books or on the books right now for us to decide on. More than 650 of those are these single family attached. So we as a board are sitting in a great place to be very picky about what we approve and what we don't approve. These homes to me say that they are very car centric. They are not neighborly. They're not about being with your neighbor. They are about parking your garage parking your car in the garage and going straight inside, and not spending time on the porch and not spending time talking to your community. And I think that we all agree that Matthews is a great place to be because of its community. So this does not reflect the values that I see that draw people to Matthews. The density is interesting to me because it's located in this corner between two high capacity roads, but the access to those roads is not very easy. And so while it is between apartments and a church and leading into single family residences, this high of density does not give you that easy access to get to Independence. It's clearly to me a commuter development, right? It's all about the cars. And you're going to have to figure out, you're going to have to navigate past the apartments or navigate through single family residences to get to those roads to commute to work. I think that summarizes my points.
I'd like to also make a comment if I could. One thing that Commissioner Garner touched on that I wrote down in my notes was improving the sight lines by essentially totally denuding the property and cutting all the trees down doesn't excite me a whole lot. We have very, very few trees left. We're getting a lot of feedback from our constituents to limit tree removal. So I don't know, that may be necessary to improve the sight line, but boy, that sure is taking a lot of trees down. Are there other comments from elected officials? And Ken, I'm going to ask you again, sir, if you could call on the planning board if they have comments. Commissioner Urban.
I get to retire. I don't need to be up here anymore. This is great. I don't have to be mean or be the bad guy. Commissioner Garner hit it right on the spot. For years, we talked about the sense of place and neighborhoods, and Matthews is a porch community. And one of the things that really struck me is there's entries to these units, but there are no porches. And you provided a courtyard, which I kind of thought was interesting. But again, who's going to be out there in one of those 90-degree days without any protection? So I think everything I've heard was sort of spot on. I mean, I had notes about, where's the sense of the neighborhood, the facades. I could maybe learn to live with this sort of west of the Mississippi look. But they were kind of odd in spots. I mean, the rear loaded, I couldn't get my hands around how the units were divided up because it wasn't clear to me from that standpoint. So there wasn't a clarity of entry, which I thought was confusing. I agree that there should be maybe more green space. And I think to your detriment, your video ruined your presentation, because I saw all those trees and along Margland. I'm sitting there going, wow, what a great opportunity to use that as a buffer. And people's rear yards, is that buffer onto Margland. And so this community doesn't impact that road, and you get a sense of the sort of ruralness of that area, but you get the density to which the economy of scale needs to work for you. I get it. I mean, if you build half these number of homes, now you're going to be $750,000. So I think you missed some good opportunities. I don't understand why you don't do all rear load product and have alleys, and that way everybody has a front porch and faces a sidewalk and has a little bit of a green space. By the way, any notes of conditions, no condensers in the front yards. So anyway, let me just kind of hit my other notes here. Take planning staff's recommendations to heart. I mean, I think their bullet points were spot on. I think that there could be some other iterations. I don't know, you need to have a central park in the center as opposed to maybe more green space in and around the buildings so the children can play closer to their home and not be, proverbially a little bit further down the street. There's some interesting notes on the drawings, but potential common area. Well, that doesn't make me a happy camper, because it is either going to be or isn't going to be. And I don't want to see it looking, it says designed and permitted separately. So I want your yes to be a yes and your no to be a no. So if it's going to be a common area, it's designed now, it's landscape now, we see what it looks like now, and we go from there. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm very appreciative of all the other commissioners' comments, because I think they're spot on. Density does not bother me so much, but it's sometimes when you do it for number crunching purposes, you lose the opportunities. So that's all I have to say.
Any other comments from elected officials? Seeing none, Ken, can you call on any of the planning board that may have a comment?
I believe planning board member Jim Johnson had a comment on Zoom.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I'm gonna just throw one more thing on there. That is actually a choke point for every ride that we do out of Matthews, and we do a lot of them. I'm talking bicycle riders. Any holiday ride, we get hundreds of riders through there, but on a daily basis, certainly on Saturday and Sunday twice, we'll get 10 or 15 riders constantly going back and forth through there. You can't fix it, but it is a choke point. I just like to bring up that little turn is, we go pretty fast around the turn. If you could smooth it out, that'd be better. But anything, if you could make the road a little wider, like a 14-foot wide road, or anything to make that better, because we go up slow and we go down fast right in that whole area. And my manager got hit on his bike several years ago back then. So I don't hear anyone talking about bikes in this project. So anything you could do to make that better or safer for us, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Mayor Pro Tem, do we have anybody else from the planning board that
Other
has
planning
any?
board members in the audience would like to speak or via Zoom?
I guess, first of all, I'll say I've gotten a little bit more used to that number of homes in that space. It still looks awfully tight. I know it's okay to have that many houses in there, but I think the way they're arranged.
Excuse me, Mike, can you hold the microphone closer to your mouth?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think a couple of the commissioners mentioned how kind of uninspiring that area is, and I would tend to agree with that. It's just a whole lot of stuff packed in there, and I totally understand that you're trying to maximize the value of the property by putting as many homes on it as you can. But I would think that a few fewer homes, a little more spreading out, especially when you just got the columns of townhomes. And to John Urban's point, to spread out the green space a little bit and give people throughout the neighborhood their own area that they can work in instead of having to go to the other side of the neighborhood to what looks like just grassy area. There may be more than that to it at some point. But right now they would just go out there in the sun in a grassy area. Also a little bit concerned that we've got 97 townhomes in there with one entrance. That's a lot of traffic, you know, especially at certain times of day. One in, one out, no turn lanes. Although I understand the DOT said not necessary, but in reality, it seems like that should at least be considered. Thank you.
Commissioner Urban.
I'd be remiss on some of the typical comments. Good point, absolutely, on the ingress and egress. This project looks akin to your Chatham Park in Pittsburgh. And so it was easy to Google your website and see something that was similar. I think back to Commissioner Garner's, but this is Matthews. I'd want to see something that's uniquely Matthews. I don't want to go to a website and see this product built someplace else. But one thing I've always harped about is end walls of units and turning corners. And it's not fun to come into a development and see a end wall with, you know, not very well adorned. Okay, we got a few windows, yay. So, I mean, porches can wrap corners. You can have porches that run the whole length of the side of the building, trellises, pergolas, things like that. You have to bring a sense of place and life to these things. And otherwise, you know, I couldn't tell you if that's a $250,000 unit townhome there or $750,000 townhome, but for $600,000 or so thousand, I think we could turn corners a little bit better too as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have another question. Is there going to be an attainable or affordable housing component to this project?
No.
All right, I'd like to remind that if anyone wants to comment on this item that's in the Zoom audience, they can use the raise hand feature on Zoom. Or if you're on a desktop or mobile device, click raise hand in the webinar controls and you'll be recognized by the name listed in your Zoom window. Or if you've joined by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. So I'll ask Maureen if anybody has indicated they'd like to comment.
No, they have not.
All right, this application will be heard by the planning board.
Mayor, you need to have the comments from the public. They have not been invited to speak yet.
Sorry. You mean anybody in the room? Mr. Buckley?
Go ahead to the podium.
Yeah, so if anybody in the live audience there wishes to speak, if you can approach the podium, state your name and address and give your comment.
Yes, my name's David Ross. 2 questions. From the aerial photography, it looks like we have 13 acres of fully wooded trees. I'd like to know how many acres or how much of an acre of tree canopy is left. Also, for the house development, I didn't see any solar panels on the rooftops. Since you are taking out so many trees, it looks like you have plenty of sunlight hitting the rooftops. Will there be, or is there an option for solar panels in a design from TriPoint? Also, for the home designs, are there any Energy Star building concepts used for the development of the homes? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Would the applicant care to respond to those questions?
Yeah, what's the tree save?
1.1 acres. So right now, the minimum 8% that is required.
And then solar.
Solar panels would be up to the individual homeowner, should they choose to put those on their home post-closing. It's not an option that TriPoint offers. As far as Energy Star appliances, yes, we do offer Energy Star appliance. Most of them are standard in our offering packages.
Please step back to the podium if you have another.
I can
comment.
follow up on that. I am not sure of the answer to that question specifically.
We can get back.
I'm sorry, could you repeat for those of us that aren't there what the question was there? Or what the comment that was?
Energy Star building concepts. And the response, Mr. Mayor, was we'd have to follow up on that, which we'll do.
A quick question on tree save, follow up on that comment. What is the tree save percentage requirement at this point in the UDO? Can someone help me?
8%.
It is, okay. Well, you hit 8% right on the nose. Thank you.
I'm Vicki Stillwell, and I live on Margland Drive. That northern corner points at our driveway. And I have brought up to you all an email about the curve. And I've got some prepared points to make, but listening to your comments, I'm going to just answer my thoughts on some of that. That's a dangerous curve. It's almost 90 degrees. Almost 90 degrees. It's a blind curve. We have so many vehicles coming into our woods, and they are just woods, but it's just been good timing so far that cars have not met each other on the wrong side of the road on that curve. And I had asked to address the curve while you have the leverage to soften that curve some, a longer sight line, less of an embankment, less of a steep curve. You all mentioned in the trees that they would be taken down to give that better vantage point. Those trees are now on a high embankment. They're not level with the ground. That embankment causes it to be a blind curve. So I don't really speak to what the wisdom of that many units or anything about their buildings, their appearance. I understand why higher density would be a better choice for this particular property. But I would like for you to use this time to take advantage to get this curve on Margland Drive, to make it safer, not just for me and my trees in my yard and the people entering and exiting Alexander Ridge, but all of the parents and children from Butler High School, Matthews Charter School, the Baptist Church, Mount Harmony Community, and all the commuters from Union County that are cutting through there to avoid the traffic on 74. They're using Margland Moore Road to do that. And this is the time, this road was built as a gravel drive back in the 50s. And the NCDOT took it over, I think, in the 60s. I was just a kid, but I remember them paving that road. They built it as the original owners built it. They did not design this road for the traffic it sees now. And now, if this is going to be developed, now is the time to address that sharp curve. And like I said, I had other things prepared, but that's what it comes down to now. Make your decision on the density and the appearance of the buildings and all that. You judge that, but don't ask them to leave trees on a high embankment that leaves that blind curve. I hear the squealing tires every day. There are way more accidents than that TIA discovered in the last 5 years. It said 22 in 5 years on Margolin Moore Road. 5 run off the roads. We have 5 run off the roads into our property every year. We had 3 in about a 3-week period. We had 2 in one day. We've lost trees. We've had the utility pole knocked down. We lose our mailbox. It's a dangerous curve, and it's just a matter of time that someone's going to be eastbound on that road, losing control, and meet a westbound car or school bus. And we need that addressed. And whenever you allow this property to be developed, will be the time to address it. And I appreciate that they're trying to work with us. I don't know if that's the right answer. I don't know if the road can be made that safe. Maybe we need a stoplight at Alexander Ridge Drive and Margolin Drive to slow people down, but make it safer for those of us who live here and everybody else that's using that road.
Commissioner Hoover. And then we'll let the developer respond to that.
Yeah, I just want to say I drive that road pretty much every day. And when you go right around that curve, right there is the entrance for Alexander Ridge. And I've had many questionable times myself. And then like you've said before, I have the concern of the 79 units for one ingress and egress. When you've got Matthews Charter School, they use that road coming in. Then all your kids for Butler going in and out. That's a really busy road. And like I said, I drive that thing every day.
Thank you, Mayor McCool. Thanks for all your comments. We appreciate those. We wish some of them were different, obviously, but we appreciate them. We sincerely do. And we will see what we can address. To Ms. Stillwell's point, I did speak with Ms. Stillwell on the phone before. And I just confirmed this with Matt. At the corner, you would knock down the embankment in connection with the development of the site, and you would remove those trees at that corner. So that would improve the site distance. I can't say that that's the only way to skin that cat, but that's what would occur if this plan were developed. So still, the embankment would be lowered through the grading process. And then as to the energy building star concepts, we can follow up on that. Now, I want to also, in terms of the buffer next to the Slavic Baptist Church, on the most recent plan that was submitted to the town, there is a commitment to do a 6-foot tall wooden screen fence and then plant 9 Leyland cypress trees per 100 square feet. If that rings a bell, that's standard to anybody on this board. That's what we agreed to do at Mount Harmony next to the individual townhomes. So we thought that would be a good thing to offer to the church. There are architectural commitments that written commitments that were found in the Mount Harmony Church rezoning as well. In the spirit of time, although you could question that as long as we've taken, and I apologize, I didn't want to read through all those, but there are many of the same ones that were found in that rezoning, and we can make you aware of those in a timely fashion. But we're happy to answer any questions. We do appreciate your comments. We'll do the best we can to see if we can address them, and we look forward to further conversations.
Mr. Carmichael, I might ask you to get in contact with the Appearance and Tree Board. I have Leland cypress in my yard that are doing fantastic. They're about 20 years old, but typically they live 12 to 15 years and die.
Okay.
They're very prone to ice damage and things like that. So that may not be the best choice of tree variety, or maybe reach out to Ralph Ramseur, our town arborist, for similar trees that are more hardy, last longer.
We're happy to do that. And the whole point is just to provide year-round screening. And
yeah, another evergreen.
Thank you. We're happy to do that.
Commissioner Urban has a comment.
So I guess the question would be, it sounds like there's going to have to be significant changes. So do we want to keep the public hearing open, or do we want to let it run the gauntlet and it goes to planning board in less than 2 weeks, Mike. And all they're going to be able to address is what you presented tonight. So how do you?
We'd like to keep it open. I mean, Tri Point does a good job, and we would like the opportunity to work something out here at this location with incorporating the comments that we've received as best we can. So yes, Commissioner Urban.
Because I would like us to take 2 bites of the apple, because I really like planning staff and planning board's comments. And if they just respond to what we had tonight, I'm not getting anything. So it'd be nice if you could come back, then we could get them into the right cycle, and then we would have the benefit of that. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what would the sequencing be? The sequence, just make sure I'm clear about that. Sorry.
So Commissioner Urban is suggesting that the board could, if they choose, vote to continue this hearing, keep it open and continue it to June 13th.
Perfect. I understand. Yes, sir.
If you request that, and if that's the result of their motion.
Yes, sir. We'd love that.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we keep this public hearing open to allow some more time for them to respond to these plans. And then the planning board has an appropriate time to look at a reasonable plan.
I'll second that.
That would be the motion to continue this.
Motion to continue.
A motion to continue by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Garner. All in favor? All opposed? I voted in the affirmative. That passes unanimously. Jay, can you give us the dates of the meetings then?
June 13th.
Thank you. Thanks to all.
All right, we'll move on to the next zoning application, 2022-757 Towns at Hayden. Involves a whole lot of parcels, but I understand that we have not received a traffic impact analysis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. That is correct. Zoning application 2022, we did not receive the TIA in time to hold the public hearing tonight. The UDO requires that the TIA be received 30 working days before the public hearing for staff review. This TIA was received on May 2nd, which bumps the public hearing to June. So the recommended motion action is to open the public hearing and continue to June 13th, 2022.
I would entertain a motion to that effect.
Mayor, that would be modified. The motion would be to continue. The public hearing is already open.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckley.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue zoning application 2022-757 Towns at Hayden until the June 13th board meeting.
Second.
Second it.
I heard a whole bunch of people second it. I think I heard Commissioner Whitley first. So the motion was from Mayor Pro Tem McCool, second by Commissioner Whitley. All in favor? Any opposed? I vote in the affirmative. That passes unanimously. Move on to item number 4, zoning application 2022-760 text amendment to amend the text of the Unified Development Ordinance section 155.506.15 CB2 to read, they shall have no more than 24 courts total, including tennis, pickleball, platform tennis, and paddle tennis courts. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor said, this is zoning motion 2022-760. That's a UDO text amendment. Match Point Sports Facilities is the applicant. They've requested the text amendment to increase the number of tennis courts, pickleball courts, platform tennis, and paddle tennis courts, which I wasn't familiar with. It's a racket sport typically played in a court that's roughly 25% smaller than a tennis court. Their request is to increase the number from 10 to 24 courts. And this is, again, a text amendment. It would apply to any commercial indoor or outdoor tennis and racket club with associated swimming pools in the RI zoning district, which we only have one as of right now. The recommended action is to hold the public hearing and then refer to the motion to the planning board for their review and recommendations at their next meeting. And I am happy to answer any questions or for staff.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, could you, would you be so kind as to show this? Do you have a geo photo of its location?
I do not, but I can provide that to you very easily. There's only, as I said, there's only one location, so we can hone in on that, but it is a text amendment that it would be applicable to the whole town.
Right, but it was specifically asked for this one particular case, but it would be a general.
Public hearing, though, you can't be site specific. You have to look at all of the places where this could happen. But you can
Correct.
still
But
furnish
I can still
information.
ask for that information, yes.
Correct.
Absolutely, sir.
Right, thank you.
Any other comments from elected officials?
Hey, Rob, what, I mean, obviously you're talking about doubling the amount of area, or do we have limitations on acreages with the RI setbacks or just something? I mean, it seems like to be able to double up, actually 2.4 times up the number of tennis and pickleball courts. I mean, what are the stipulations do we have in RI that weigh this? And the other thing I would say, just in general, is that tennis is loud enough in itself, and to double up its capacity is, in my mind, just superficially doubling the amount of sound.
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of look in a very sort of 30,000 foot level more about this RI zoning and the what ifs, you know, the hypotheticals aspiration of it, especially on the land side. I mean, you know, is RI zoning restricted to certain sizes? What are their setbacks and things of that nature?
We can look into that and get that information to the board. Right now, there are site-specific conditions, so it's I don't have the setbacks off the top of my head. I apologize for that.
That's fine. That's why we're here.
Okay.
Time to bet that.
Okay, very good.
Any other comments from elected officials? Mayor Pro Tem, anything from the planning board?
Wait, I have a
Commissioner
question before we move on. So if I gotta think my way through this, because it's not site specific. If there's a text amendment, is there a notice? Is there a zoning notice or a text amendment change notice on the property so that neighboring single family homes know to comment on this?
Not in the text amendment, because it is not site specific. So we don't notice or post a property for a text amendment.
And I guess this is a question for Charlie, is then how this would have a huge impact on the people living around the area for any of these rezonings. How?
I would have to assume that the existing site that is being discussed would have conditional zoning on it, and therefore their conditional district would have to be amended, and that's when the zoning sign would go up on that specific site.
Okay, so
to be able to change the existing footprints.
Okay, thank you.
At that site would require a conditional zoning amendment.
okay, so at some point there will be
At some point, yes.
a public notice saying this is a possibility.
Yes, but let's make sure that I don't think this tennis court is on a straight zone. I'm pretty sure that was all done with conditional zoning back when. Yeah, but I don't think we had at that time a site, a strict zoning that would allow this. Had to be through conditional zoning, I'm pretty sure. So then that zoning district would have to be amended. That's a conditional district to add the courts or to, new footprints for the, whatever the, what we'll call it elevations are for these courts would have to come before the board again for approval or disapproval. And that's when the neighbors would get to have their comments made.
That makes sense. Thank you. I would like to know that before we, I guess, yeah. Well, before, I guess, June 13th. Yes.
Very good. Commissioner Urban, I do have the setbacks in the RI district. They're 50 feet for the pretty much all around. 50.
I think it sort of goes to Commissioner Garner's point, is sort of the hypothetical RI zoning. What are the setbacks? What are the conditions? What are the required buffers and things like that? Because, you know, we all know what a tennis court is, double that. That's a lot of land. And I think it goes to the sort of theoretical hypothesis about what if they're adjacent other residential and things of that nature. So, all right, so 50 feet, I'll make that note. Thank you.
All right. Any comment from any of the planning board members? Questions? About anybody in the on-site audience? Would anybody like to comment on this?
Please go up to the podium to make a comment. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Bob Robinson. I'm the owner of Match Point Sports, which is Matthews Tennis Club. And just to make a couple things, just to clear a thing or two that was said, the paddle sports have changed drastically in the last 5 years. And we can put 4 pickleball courts on the same space as 1 tennis court. So I heard a comment about we're going from 10 to 24, 2.5 times. That's not so at all. The courts are much smaller, whether it's pickleball, padel tennis, platform tennis, they're much smaller courts. The thing that's happened in the sport or in the industry is people have drastically changed from tennis to pickleball specifically. It started out, it was the favored sport of older folks. Now it's everybody. Today, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the United States. And all we're asking is just to be able to have more courts available for the community, for the club members. So, and we did have a site plan. I mean, I don't, but it was submitted. I thought,
Commissioner
We can't talk site specifically.
Right.
But I
It's
think
just
the
the
text,
text.
but I think the text amendment could be refined then, because if you're just talking about pickleball, if you eliminated the fact that you went to, it says here, you shall no more than strike out 24 courts total, including tennis, pickleball, and platform tennis. If the wording was changed in such that we understood that you were swapping out pickleball for tennis courts, then it allays my fears. Based on how you described it, you're getting a 4-to-1 upgrade on the tennis court. But because this says including tennis courts, the potential is in the RI zoning for you to add more tennis courts. So I think if you just work with staff, maybe to fine tune the text, that would alleviate our fears that somehow we're exponentially growing this thing. And what you're telling me is you're basically want the option to swap out 4-to-1 on existing tennis courts.
not necessarily.
Okay.
We do want to add separate pickleball courts, but we have 22 acres at this site. I mean, this is a big site. There's really hardly any neighbors. I mean, it is, you know, most of you have been there, but it's, again, these are smaller courts. We do intend to add courts. That's the whole purpose, but not adding 14 or whatever tennis
I just think we
courts.
need to have some clarity on that. And I think the good news is that there is only one RI zoning in existence. So that helps control the discussion.
All right, so I'll work with Rob on that. Is that right? Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the on-site audience that would care to address this zoning application?
I just have a general question. Are there any other facilities in town equivalent to what you're proposing?
Oh, and can you answer that? Well, they're not in town, so the town would be Matthews. Yeah, so no.
So
Okay, thank
we're,
you.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah, I mean, it's
just to
like-
clarify.
Right, yeah, not in the town of Matthews. That's correct. We're the only swimming racket club.
Thank you.
All right, if anyone wants to
If
comment
you have
on
a
this
question,
item,
please come up to the podium so the entire Zoom audience can hear. Please state your name for the record.
My name's David Ross. I was just pointing out, what about Butler High School and other institutional establishments that may also have tennis courts? Would this not still apply to them? And Commissioner Urban, there was a great point about the noise. Paddleball or pickleball is noisier when it hits the paddle than tennis. Although when the ball hits the court, it's not as noisy. Thank you.
That's a great question, Mr. Ross. This only applies to commercial indoor or outdoor recreational facilities with courts or a pool.
all right, for those that are in the Zoom audience, if you're on a desktop or mobile device, you can click the raise hand feature in the webinar controls and you'll be recognized by the name listed in your Zoom window. Or if you joined by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. I'll ask Ms. Keith if we have anybody in the virtual audience that wants to comment on this request.
No, Mr. Mayor, we do not.
All right, this application will be heard by the planning board on May 24th and come back to the Board of Commissioners on June 13th. All right, I will entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did, Whitley.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Whitley to reconvene the regular meeting, second by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. All in favor? I vote affirmative as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go on to planning and development business. First, we'll receive our planning board report from Mr. Foster.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners and Planning Board members. I have the Planning Board report from our meeting of April 26, 2022. We've got several items for town board action this evening, starting with zoning application 2022-747, Williams Creek to change the zoning from R15 to RVS on that certain property designated as 2400 Williams Road, further being designated as tax parcels 93-531-06, 7, and 8. Members of the planning board reviewed the SRN and RVS zoning request, the updated site plans, the updated elevations for the quadruplex, triplex, and detached residential units, and traffic improvements that would be implemented by the developer. Planning board unanimously recommended approval. Members found the request to be consistent with the Matthews land use plan because it would provide a variety of housing styles, densities, and locations, and encourage the design and construction of alternative style housing and infill development. The request was found to be reasonable in that it provided a compatible land use and connectivity. Second item, zoning application 2022-751, dynamic lighting, LED supply. Change the condition on that certain I-1 CD district located at 10718 Monroe Road, and further being tax parcel 213-012-28, and to add additional permitted uses. Planning board reviewed the list of requested uses and unanimously recommended approval. The request was found to be consistent with the Matthews land use plan because it expanded commercial uses along the Monroe Road corridor. The request was found to be reasonable and that it will not change the site itself and is in keeping with other uses along the corridor. Third item, text amendment 2022-754 to change the text of the CRC district to allow independent living facilities to establish required parking for independent living facilities in the CRC and to allow an increase in the height limitations to independent living facilities in the CRC district. Members were presented with the three-part text amendment request. The applicant agreed to planning staff's request to update the text to limit the facility height to 50 feet in the CRC district. Members reviewed the parking reduction, the use, and the building height and voted unanimously to recommend approval. Planning Board found the request to be consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan because it will provide another zoning district to permit senior independent living housing, which is encouraged as a way of diversity housing types. The request was found to be reasonable as it provides the opportunity for senior housing in the greater density in the CRC zoning district, but continues to place a minimum acreage cap on the project size. The recommendation was made with the condition that the maximum building height not exceed 50 feet. Zoning application 2022-755, Mount Moriah Senior Living. Change the conditions in that certain CRC2 district, more particularly described as 381 Crestel Road, 407 Crestel Road, and 416 Crestel Road, and also identified as tax parcels 215-021-11, 15, and 50 to allow senior adult living units. The Planning Board reviewed the site plan elevations, and members unanimously recommended approval. The request was found to be consistent with Matthews Land Use Plan because the town should provide an array of housing types, densities, and locations. The request was found to be reasonable as it will add more affordable housing for the town of Matthews. Next item, zoning application 2022-756, Lima Townhomes. To change the zoning from R12 to RVS on a certain property designated as 1718 Matthews Mint Hill Road, also designated as tax parcel 215-10216. Planning staff said the applicant was requesting a withdrawal of this request with the intention of reapplying with a better layout and overall plan at a later date. Members unanimously recommended denial of this application so the applicant can be granted more time to submit again in the future. And the last item, motion 2022-1 I-1 text amendment to amend the existing UDO to allow a limited amount of outdoor storage in the I-1 zoning district. Planning Board reviewed text updates that included requirements the outdoor storage be well maintained, limited to 25% area, the maximum square footage of the building, and limited to 20 feet in height. The board unanimously recommended the motion for approval. The Planning Board found that the request to be consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan because it supports light industrial uses. The request was found to be reasonable as it allowed only a limited amount of outdoor storage while still supporting both light industrial uses. That is my report for this evening. Are there any questions?
Not seeing any questions. Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Move on to planning and zoning related actions. First, we need to call on Commissioner Urban to recuse himself from the first three.
Everything to do with the flagship healthcare, the zoning application 2021-742, in moving down to zoning application 2021-743, those are all properties that abound my current office property. So I asked to be recused. Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, you're not asking, you are recused.
Been recused for about 6 months on these.
No, I know, but you have to recuse yourself under the statute.
Oh, well, then I'll recuse myself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. So we'll move on to the first item, public improvement variance for flagship healthcare. Mr. Will.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Again, this is request for a public improvement variance to remove the requirement for a 10-foot side path and planting strip along Highway 51 and Team Road. Well, briefly, staff does not support the proposed request or alignment of the side path, but instead staff recommends the following: approve the installation of a 5-foot sidewalk along Team Road and preservation of an 8-foot planting strip to retain existing street trees and installation of the 10-foot side path along Highway 51. This recommendation will most likely require a swim buffer variance to allow for the extension of piping under Highway 51 and fill to be placed to achieve the appropriate grades for improvements without having to install retaining wall. The applicant has requested postponement, and so the recommended motion is to postpone for further study per the applicant's request and to work with staff.
I'll make a motion to continue the decision on zoning petition 2021-742 pending resolution of the public improvement variance request per the applicant.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Garner, a second by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. I have a question. Do we, for Mr. Buckley, do we need to continue it to a specific date?
We do, otherwise it'll come up at the next regular meeting. So if we want to keep this on a zoning night, it would be till the 13th of June.
I will correct my motion to continue this decision until June 13th.
And I'll re-second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. I vote affirmative as well. Okay, Rob, I guess continue to the next one, zoning application 2021-742 Flagship Health again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is again zoning petition 2021-742. The recommended motion here is to continue the decision on this zoning petition pending resolution of the public improvement variance per the applicant's request. So another continuation to June 13th.
I'll make the motion to continue. I'll make a motion to continue the decision on zoning petition 2021-742 pending resolution of the public improvement variance request per the applicant's request to the June 13th board meeting.
So that's the one we just did, isn't it? We did, this one should be the.
This one, no, next.
We went with Flagship Health and now we're on Hoyle. So I read the one.
I
the
second it.
one.
All right, can we get some clarification on these items? These are two separate items for Flagship Health, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And the first one does actually not, the public improvement variance does not have a associated petition number. It's just a public improvement variance. I think that's where the confusion was.
I made a motion for the wrong item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So maybe I should make a motion to postpone for further study per applicant's request to June 13th.
So we're back on the public improvement variance?
Improvement variance.
Second.
All right, we'll take that vote again. We have a motion from Commissioner Garner, a second by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously with myself voting affirmative. Now we'll move on to item 2, zoning application 2021-742. So I believe we had a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McCool, a second by Commissioner Whitley, correct? Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Commissioner Tofano, did you vote in favor? Okay, so that passes unanimously
No,
as well.
excuse me. We are voting on number 3 at this time.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay, thank you.
How do you vote, sir?
I know. So I vote for it. Thank you.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Now we're on item 3, zoning application 2021-743 Hoyle. To change the zoning from R20, B1, I1, and I1CD to B1CD and B8CD on those certain properties also currently designated as 633 Sam Newell Road, 641 Sam Newell Road, and 720 Lyles Cruz Circle, and further being designated as tax parcels 193-245-11, 193-245-08, and a portion of 193-245-24. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is a recommendation to make a motion to continue the final decision until a revised site plan can be developed per the applicant's request. We do not have a revised site plan at this time.
All right, I would entertain a motion to that effect.
Before we make a motion, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is the applicant, I was told the applicant is not interested in putting one of the buildings on the property. Is there an interest in coming up with a new site plan altogether that's not just a single building, or is it?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
There still will be two structures from the draft site plan that I have and the conversations we have had.
Is it appropriate at this to make a suggestion?
Certainly.
I think one of the first, well, when we first considered this petition with two structures, I felt like there was a better use for the property as far as the size of the structure of the building and not having two separate, not integrated buildings. So I hope that when the applicant comes back, they do take into consideration some of the examples that the planning department has shown with North End and Strawberry Hill being good inspiration and starting points for this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Garner. Would someone care to make a motion, or are there other comments?
I'll make a motion to continue the the final decision until a revised site plan can be developed per applicant's request.
Again, I think we need to specify a date.
June 13th.
For June 13th.
That's
We have a second.
21/7/43.
Exactly what he said.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McCool, a second by Commissioner Whitley. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. I'd like to ask Commissioner Urban to rejoin our meeting.
See what happens when I recuse myself? Chaos breaks out.
All right, so we stand with the full team back in effect now. We'll go on to item 4, zoning application 2022-746, Campus Ridge Road. Change the zoning from R20 to I2 CD on that certain property designated as 3250, 3240, 3012 Campus Ridge Road, and further being designated as tax parcels 215-06109, 215-06110, and 215-06101. Ms. Bennett.
Thank you. As you said, this is a rezoning request from R20 to I2 CD, and you have a revised memo for today because it's substantially the same except for the staff recommendation, and I will get to that in just a moment. So since the time of the public hearing, the applicant has really revised the allowed uses. They've really cut it down to light manufacturing and assembly, warehouse distribution, contractor facility with outdoor storage, and outdoor storage as allowed in I2 zoning. They also supplied some example buildings of what could go on the site. They gave us proposed street frontage. Staff believes that they've come a long way since that initial application. And we generally support the rezoning on this property. We have one remaining concern about the property, and can you move it to show there you go. And it's really just this corner of the building. They show, as I said, the proposed street frontage, but that's really for the widest part between the building and the street. And we feel like this really comes close to the street. It could possibly still develop across the street as residential, and this just seems like a big industrial building, even though it's a fairly nice one that could just come right up to the street. And because of that, we were not prepared to make a recommendation. Again, we generally support the rezoning request. We are not opposed to it. We just thought that there might be some room for discussion on this portion of the property if you wanted to do that this evening. And we do have someone here to speak if you want to talk to them about it.
I do have a question.
Sure.
So this vote that we're about to take, it's only to change the rezoning to a conditional rezoning.
The
Does
vote that
it-
you're going to take would change it from R20 to I2CD.
Right. but what I-
And the conditions would be the ones listed here.
And so in other words, we're actually taking in this rendering into our consideration.
Yes, you are, because they did supply that with their
Thank you
with their
for
most
that.
recent package.
Yeah.
And I should point out also that they will come back to you if you do pass the rezoning or approve the rezoning. They still need to come back with a site plan, but we still felt that we wanted to get it right here so that when they come back to you, you'll have something to base your decision on.
That was actually the basis of my question. So in other words, we're not voting on this particular rendering.
Not that exact rendering, but that kind of sets the parameters for it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right.
And if you have questions, again, we do have someone here.
Nadine, the applicant's present. Would they care to speak? Is it Ms. Rickers?
Thank you, Commissioners, Mayor Pro Tem, planning staff, and planning board members. We do think we've come a long way, and we do present an illustrative site plan for you because we just wanted to let you know how potentially big that 150,000 square feet was. But in ultimate honesty, we have to come back. We're going to be back before you with a site elevation and a site plan. So we think that will be dealt with at that time. We have provided additional landscaping around that corner and in the front along Campus Ridge, since it's the only visible site. So we believe that we can work with staff on the plantings there to make sure that there is adequate landscape. We really don't believe, and I don't know that anybody on the board believes, that residential is really going to end up right across from that corner. The portion of property across the street is directly on the CSX rail line. And I don't know that residential, and none of the small area plans recommend residential along the CSX rail line. So for those reasons, we didn't feel like this was something that we needed to address at this time. We believe that the council will have the opportunity to address it when it comes back for the site plan. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Are there any questions?
Commissioner Hoover.
Yeah, I just want to say that in 1991, this industrial facilities were brought into the town's jurisdiction. And we knew back then that this was going to be a sticky little situation and only a certain amount of things were going to be allowed here. And even states in our industrial land use that when operations of these facilities cease, the town should evaluate and encourage viable land uses. So I think we need to really, to me, it's just kind of common sense that, there's only a certain amount of things that can go here. And looking at this, what they're proposing to me is, there needs to be some tweaks and changes, but I have no issues with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoover. Any other elected official have a comment or question?
Commissioner Urban.
Appreciate petitioner's efforts on this. Realizing it's kind of a fallback position. A petitioner says, well, we'll come back to you for site plan review and elevations. And then what happens is it's a round of elevations or site plan issues, and everybody works together to a certain point, and then we get worn out and we just sort of, well, it's best we can get out of it and we approve it. I'm not opposed to this being obviously, some type of light industrial or fintech or something like that. But I think at this stage in the game, in talking to staff, is I would rather sort of set the bar high, set a precedent about these are the architectural standards, because the images you sent me or sent everybody were just Class C tilt-up concrete buildings. Merriman Schmidt does them all over the area. And there's some really, really nice examples, well-scaled, massing, colors, articulation, the whole 9 yards. So I'd rather see, the bar set, the conditions and the landscaping determined, the architectural values predetermined, et cetera, et cetera. So we set, again, that bar very high. So at this stage, I don't know how many years I've been here, we usually don't vote on vagaries. And personally, myself, I'm only one of 7. I'm not about to vote on a vagary, so I'm opposed to this zoning petition as it stands the way it is.
If I may respond, I think we understand your concern certainly, but I think one of the comments that we've had previously and one of the understandings that we have of this property is this will simply be a dead property if we can't get it rezoned to an industrial use, because no one will come into this property knowing that there's not an industrial commercial use available. And I think we've had good conversations with staff about there are a lot of different potential uses out there commercially. It could be small office buildings with, lay down yards in the back. It could be a lot of different things. And so we feel like we need to preserve that footprint, because what we're hearing from the broker on this is that 150,000 square feet is the sweet spot. And it is necessary for us to make this marketable and get it back into usable commercial property.
Well, and I don't have a problem with that, but 150,000 square foot of a 30-foot tall blank tilt-up panel is different than a panel that's articulated, a panel that has clear story windows in it to make it look like it has 2 stories, a berm that is X amount of height along the road edge that hides the general mass of the building, tree planting scape and stuff like that. I mean, there are things. My analogy was, I think, to staff was, there's the auto mall that Hendrick did up in Cary, and it's just gorgeous because they set the bar high about it and it doesn't look like a strip center of automobiles. So that's where I'm saying is, okay, you want 150,000 square feet here, that's fine, but set those conditions about what that building has to do and be. Otherwise, we're just going to get a 30-foot tall, 7.25 inch thick concrete wall bunker, and I'm not willing to go there.
I have,
Excuse me. Yeah, that was
Sure.
the question I asked before you came up to the podium was, we're not voting on this rendition. We are going to be presented with other renditions of which we will make a vote.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're really only voting on tonight is whether or not to convert it to its conditional I2 zoning, correct?
Planning staff comment if they need to, but yes, that our intention is to get the rezoning and to come back with elevations. Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I had a comment. Jay and I chatted last Monday about this area and how you have students who are driving to Central Piedmont Community College. I agree that it needs to be more of an attractive building, because I can imagine, a prospective student driving through there and having a industrial, quite frankly, ugly building going into campus isn't going to be good for Central Piedmont. I know that this was a former medical incinerator site, so not much can be built there, but we also have to look as a whole of what this area is. And this is our only higher education place in the town. And so we need to maybe take a second look at this whole area and what that can become moving forward, because I'm sure Central Piedmont wouldn't be too thrilled if it's nothing but industrial, and this may set off a domino effect of all industrial uses along this Campus Ridge Road. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. I'm generally supportive of the petition. I think it's a good use of the land, frankly. I do recognize some of the issues that have been brought up. One thing that does give me pause is staff not being willing to give a recommendation. So perhaps what we should do on this item is to continue it once again, like many others tonight, and give staff and the applicant time to work out a few of the unknowns in the next month or so. But again, in general, I think this would be as Mayor Pro Tem McCool said, this was a former medical incinerator site. So there's not a lot, we don't have a lot of options of what can go here. I'm not overly concerned that, I understand some of the comments that were made by Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioner Urban, but I think we can iron out some of those details when the elevations come before us.
And again, if I could ask the question one more time. Okay, so we are going to be presented with additional renderings. We are going to vote on those renderings. But the only question I have of our town attorney is, At the next meeting, when we actually vote on whatever renderings, can we do a continuance at that point if we are not satisfied with those particular renderings?
Yes, sir, you can continue that to another hearing on what, continue the hearing. But you don't know yet when they're going to bring that back. It doesn't mean they're going to bring it back next meeting. So what you vote on tonight, if it passes, then they've got a chance to do whatever it is they're going to do to make this workable for them and come back within this footprint. So it may be a month, it may be 2-3 months before they come back with.
Correct, but it's in their best interest to come back as soon as possible. Right.
It sounded like you were saying, well, they'll come back at the next meeting. Yeah, no, they won't necessarily come back at the next meeting, but at whatever meeting they bring it, you can continue that for further.
Very good, very good. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, again, we need to address this in some fashion this evening.
Commissioner Garner.
Ken, to your point, the property across the street from this and surround and all down Campus Ridge Road is currently owned by Hendrick Auto Mall. And so there is a chance that I guess that it could be rezoned to residential, but I think we could reasonably expect it to become something business oriented.
Yeah, I didn't have anything wrong with that. It just, you don't want industrial. I think we have two different wavelengths. I'm not suggesting that we build residential across, but if, for example, Central Piedmont wanted to expand, they may not be inclined to if we have a lot of industrial. That's what Jay and I spoke about last week, if he wants to speak to that at all.
I believe, Jay, doesn't it show possibly a mix of uses right across the street? So it actually does show on the adopted plan, which I don't think anyone knows whether that could happen at this point still, but I believe it does actually show a mix of uses across the street.
Across Campus Ridge,
Mhm.
even though it's owned by.
Yeah, we shared that with planning board. Sorry.
That's not part of this John Street small area plan though, is it?
It's not.
I mean, I understand it's here, but part of the discussion I think is for me, as I was looking at this, the John Street small area plan across the railroad tracks, is mixed use or projected some level of mixed use. And so there's residential and while maybe industrial won't be the highest paying jobs in the area, when you have jobs located adjacent to housing or eventual housing, you have less cars on the road traveling down John Street or traveling down Independence to get to Charlotte. And I think that's important for us to consider too, is that we have to balance that, putting jobs in Matthews and integrating those into residential areas.
If you do, because you were talking about keeping it open and continuing it, I think I would like some direction on how specific you want them to be. That'd be reasonable to ask for, because they have really kind of narrowed it down since we started, and they have taken most of our suggestions. And I think it's just the speculative nature of it right now. It's hard to say exactly what it's going to look like. Again, we were just concerned this was too close. So I just, how specific do you want them to be on it? That would be, if they do it, that would be helpful, I assume, for you. You're not.
It doesn't matter how specific
Right.
now.
You're not
correct?
approving this
It's just on and we can
specific
go
plan.
as often as we want on this. Okay, so does the applicant wish to do a continuance?
Well, I guess I'm seeking clarification because I don't think we would like a continuance to discuss the corner of the building. I think because this isn't necessarily the corner of the building. I agree with Commissioner Tufano. When we come back on the site elevation, we will be discussing the color of the tilt wall building, whether or not we're doing different articulations on the tilt wall building. That will all be open for discussion at site elevation time, but it's not something that we can project now. And whether or not that corner is that corner exactly is not something that I think that we could put in detail now. So if the continuation is only to discuss the corner, then I don't know that the continuation is something that we really care to have. If it's the continuation is something else and we need and you have direction for that, then
my intake from his inquiry to me a little while ago was at the second hearing, can that be continued?
Yes.
Not tonight's meeting.
Right.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So it never was brought up about
Okay.
continuing
Okay.
tonight.
Okay.
So I think you were a little,
That's where I think I
with
got.
all the discussion, I think you got off base a little bit. The question was not as tonight's continuance,
I thought I'd
but
heard that
future
from someone
continuance.
else.
No, we would be fine with that, Commissioner Spano. If it comes back for site elevations, then continuations, finish those discussions. That's.
I'm sorry, Mr. Buckley. I'm the one who brought up the possibility of a continuance because staff wasn't ready to make a recommendation, and I was talking about tonight. But if it's the pleasure of the board, let's make a motion to approve or deny.
Did you have something, Jay? Oh, I thought you were standing up because you actually.
Well, I don't muddy this further. I think for me, this is a mixture of a building footprint and a site-specific plan, so it's a little bit confusing. And if your board takes action and approves this, it creates this footprint that you're legally allowed to build in, even though you still have to come to the board in the future. Well, they have to come to the board in the future. But my concern is it puts the board in a tricky situation where you're legally entitled to put development on that plan where it's shown in that buildable area. So that it's a little bit confusing to me for you to be able to say in the future after the zoning is approved, well, no, we changed our mind. We really don't want you to have a building there because you've already approved it. I think that's where some of the confusion is coming from, this being a speculative development. Our assertion has just been, look, utilitarian buildings like this are fine. They're needed in the world. We've talked about breaking this up, having a building that creates an urban street edge. That's not really the goal here. So, plan B, buffer it. Do a 30-foot or a 40-foot or a 50-foot buffer and screen it really well so that when people are driving down to the community college, they're not looking at a blank wall, they're looking at a berm or lush landscaping next to a sidewalk. So that's, and the reason we kind of pulled this in is it's really going to be difficult to buffer this building on that corner. So that was sort of our one final concern. But as far as the use, we're not opposed to the use.
Correct. So in the conditional portion of the rezoning, is buffering part of that condition?
It can be, absolutely.
Okay.
Commissioner Urban.
If the applicant agrees to it.
This is my point. You're going to ask one more time, that's fine. But if you approve tonight what they give you, you've already watered down the conversation because there are going to be certain things, as Jay specified, that will become sacrosanct, for lack of a better word. And then you will move on from there to have these discussion points. So, for example, that corner of the building could be chamfered at a 45 and could be pulled 50 feet off to create a buffer. And you could sit here tonight and say, that's the condition I want to make. My point is, I would rather work out those details now and set the bar and the precedent, because if you don't do it now, you say, well, it doesn't matter. They're going to come back from a elevation approval. Yes, they will, but that corner will still be there. And the potential is, let's say they come back a year from now and they say, well, we can only put one door and one window in here to make it work. And you say, well, add me another door. And, and we don't get what we want really because we just beat each other up over time. So I would just be very cautious that tonight is what you see is what you get at the level of the site planning thing. You can't change that afterwards.
What I'm hearing is you can't change the footprint area.
No, yeah, you're locking in things at this.
But you can change what goes in that footprint. Am I correct?
I could care less what goes in it because they've limited their list to only like 4 or 5 things.
No, I don't mean the use. I mean the actual physical thing that goes in there. Its dimensions, its setbacks, its buffers.
Well, there's future architectural approval that is part of their conditional notes.
Does it not make sense for us to talk about this as that the images are for illustration only, right? They brought us images because it's a vague, very difficult to understand, very difficult to sort of picture what an industrial building could look like, right? They brought to us a proposal that said they would put in that it would be zoned for industrial, and in my mind, it automatically goes to a metal building, a metal shed. And so they came back with whittled down uses and some illustrations of what it means to put up an industrial building. Now, this is not what Mark, I think, keeps asking, or Commissioner Tofano keeps asking, is, are we voting on this? So when we make a motion, could we not clarify that we are not voting on setbacks, that we are only voting on zoning?
Well, even in the conditional zoning, setbacks are going to be set by what is required in the underlying zoning.
And what are those, Jay? I mean, so.
Sorry, Mr. Buckley, I couldn't hear your comments. Did you have your microphone on? I couldn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, I just said that if whatever you vote on tonight, whatever the underlying zoning in it, that's going to set the setbacks, period.
Correct.
And so what we want to hear from planning department is a recommended setback before we make a vote. And if you have an idea of what that setback is, then somebody could make a motion to say that we approve this with setback X.
So setback in the I-1 district, or sorry, in I-2 is 40 feet, but you can also park in the front setback. So the question about buffering and such, those are the items that you would typically, as opposed to by right zoning, those are items that you would typically iron out as part of your conditional zoning, some of the general site features. So yeah, but by the letter of the law, it's 40-foot front setback. It has to be. They can't modify it or reduce it.
If I may, we have agreed as conditions to this landscaping with additional landscape buffering over and above the requirements in I-2. And we have also agreed to no metal on the building. The primary facade has to be this tilt wall, which you can color and articulate and do things to. So we have attempted to do that. It's not our understanding that we have to hide the wall of the building from the street, but we have done additional buffering with landscaping there to try and go above and beyond and make this Campus Ridge Road, which is the only facing part of the building, that to make that a little bit more beautiful, more acceptable that way.
And what is that? I'm sorry, what is the buffer? I'm kind of dizzy talking about this here. What is the buffer that you have on here, or the setback? And since it's above and beyond?
The buffer is the 40-foot setback, but we have done the tree save that you're supposed to do on that front portion of the planting is supposed to be, I've got it written down. One tree every 40 feet, and we have added an extra 10 trees on Campus Ridge.
So as a board, we know that this cannot be a residential use. So there are limited options here. And the applicant is going above and beyond the conditions on a I-2 zoning. So from that information and understanding that, yes, they will come back with site plans and with elevations to be approved separately, I would like to make a motion that we approve. Let me find. Zoning petition 2022-746 Esperanza Properties to change the zoning from R20 to I2 CD.
We have a motion from Commissioner Garner. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Whitley. I want to make another comment. I don't have a big issue with the corner of the building being in the location that is shown. As the applicant said, we're not going to hide this building. You're not going to not know that there's a massive industrial site at this location. And what comes to mind for me is some of our quote unquote stealth cell towers, which look ridiculous, when we try to hide things. So I'm okay with it. I think when the site plan comes back and we have more developed elevations, we can discuss some of the, more finer points, but I'm okay with it as it is right now. So right now we have a motion from Commissioner Gardner, a second from Commissioner Whitley. Is there other discussion?
The motion needs to include the reasonable inconsistency.
Right, I need to finish that. So because the rezoning is consistent with the land use plan and because it promotes the growth of light industrial uses along the CSX railroad line, and it is reasonable in that it allows the development of otherwise unusable land.
I'll second it again.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes 5-2 with Commissioner Urban and Mayor Pro Tem McCool in opposition. Thank you. Move on to item number 5, zoning application 2022-747 Williams Creek, to change the zoning from R15 to RBS on that certain.
Myself and Commissioner Urban.
Take a 5 or 10 minute
Yeah,
break.
can we take a break?
Let's take a 10-minute recess.
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. What did you, is there a desire to take a break?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't
can
hear
hear
you,
you.
but we're having a tech issue. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
We lost you in the room. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Hello? All right, do we have everybody back? Are we ready to resume the meeting?
John, this is Doug. I can hear you, but I can't hear anybody else.
Yeah, I can't hear anybody else either. Can the elected officials, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Are we ready to resume the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Move on to number 5. One second, please. Here we go. Okay, zoning application 2022-747 Williams Creek to change the zoning from R15 to RVS on that certain property designated as 2400 Williams Road and further being designated as tax parcel 193, 531, 06, 07, and 08. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. This is been through a number of changes since we first saw it at the public hearing. So I think it's important that I run through those changes with the board and we can talk about them. In response to comments at the public hearing, they have revised community open space. The revised community open space location is to be located in the front and central portion of the property, closer to Williams Road. As you recall, it was previously tucked away in the rear portion of the property. They've added 10-foot sidewalks around and through the community space for open and ease of access. They've added additional parking around the community space. They have committed to securing the Honeycutt property by providing fencing along certain lots that are adjacent to the Honeycutt property. They have provided density of proposed products within this development. I think this is one of the biggest changes. They are now proposing duplexes, triplexes, quadplex, small and large single-family lot homes. They have created an additional street buffer from Williams Road. Now the buildings are 90 feet from Williams Road, excuse me. And they have split the proposed development into 2 zoning districts. Previously, it was all considered to be proposed to be RVS, but the maximum size for RVS is 15 acres. So they had to go back, and so the southern portion of the project is now SRN, which is small residential neighborhood. The northern portion continues to be RVS, which is just under 15 acres. Additionally, the developer is committed to the following road improvements in the conditional zoning notes. Signal at Williams and Sam Newell, turn lanes at Sam Newell and Williams intersection, 2-way center turn lane along Williams Road, 10-foot sidewalk along road frontage of Williams, and pedestrian crossings on Williams Road. As we have heard, there have been a number of changes. The recommended action this evening is to postpone decision by the board because staff has not had significant time to review the revised site plan and conditional notes. Revised plan was received on 4/21, was presented to the planning board, which they recommended approval unanimously. And further revised plan was received on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. May 4th. So we would ask, we do feel that this is a very improved from what we have seen at the site at the public hearing, and would just like some time to put it through the test. And then, yeah, there's the site plan. This is the revised site plan. This is the RVS section. So you can see in the middle, there is the Central Community Park. Along Williams Road, there is a substantial buffer, as well as triplexes and quadplexes. And then also the large and medium-sized single-family lots. So I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. The requested motion is to postpone to June 13.
All right, anybody have any questions for Rob?
I have a question. Do you have like a sort of a side-by-side comparison so we can see what it was and what it has?
What has become?
Yes.
I can put that together absolutely for you.
Okay.
I do not have it. I do not have it for you tonight, but that's a great idea.
Okay. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see the changes sort of. I keep trying to flip back and forth and I can't do it. And after my last 2 attempts at making a motion, I'm not going to do that. We'll save you, but I'm sure someone else would love to.
I'd like to make a motion to continue zoning application. We're correct. Postpone, continue. We're supposed to say continue. Continue be the correct verbiage. To continue zoning application 2022-747 Williams Creek until the June 13th board meeting.
And we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Garner. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously with me voting affirmative as well. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item, zoning application 2022-751 dynamic LED supply to change the condition on that certain I-1 CD district located at 10718 Monroe Road and further being tax parcel 213-01228 to add additional permitted uses. Ms. Bennett, you're up again.
Yes, and as you said, this is a change of conditions at 10718 Monroe Road. And this, just as a refresher, this is a property that has had violations on it for some time now. And the town has been requesting that they ask for a change of conditions again for some time now. The uses that they want to add are upholstering, retail sales, manufacturing, processing, assembling, copy, printing, and photo processing, building material storage and wholesale and retail sales without outdoor storage, bakery retail, including manufacturing of goods for sale on the premises only, sign manufacturer, professional, financial, personal, and recreational services not otherwise listed. And it's also important to note that this really is just a change in the uses. It's just what's going on inside of the building. There's no change to the site plan at all. So no change to the building and the site plan. If they ever wanted to do that, they would have to come back.
Any questions, comments, or motions?
Mr.
Commissioner
Mayor,
Whitley.
motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve zoning application 2022-75 because it's consistent with the rezoning, or consistent with their land use plan that expands commercial use along the Monroe Road corridor, and is reasonable rezoning that will not change the site itself and in keeping with other uses along the corridor.
Second.
I have a question.
Commissioner Willie, I think you may wanted to mean that 2022-751,
What did I say?
755.
751.
Yeah, you meant to say 751.
It's getting late in the evening.
It is.
751, yes.
Commissioner Gardner has a question.
I know at some point, maybe 2 decades ago, it was they sold like four-wheelers at this property. Are there any, do you know if there's a history of pollution on the property or like ground pollution? And I ask that because it's including photo processing. And if we can prevent that ground from becoming polluted by the chemicals of photo processing, I would like to take that out of the acceptable uses.
I'm not familiar with any kind of violations, and I'm also not really familiar with what photo processing does for in terms of the environment. So I can't really speak to that.
The applicant present?
Yes, she is.
Ms. King, would you consider removing photo processing from the list of permitted uses?
Oh, okay, I'm here. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind moving that they are out of the list, but just to let you know, the photo processing does not, it doesn't have anything to do with the pollution, because we had experience when they process the photos, they have a container, chemical container within the machine itself that collects, and and the company, the text bag, so it doesn't drain out through the ground or anything to pollute.
I think I would be more comfortable with specifying, I don't know what, but I'm not familiar enough with the industry. I'm just familiar enough to know that we have property in town that's got some significant ground pollution from photo processing, that somehow I would like to see that limited to maybe.
But if that causes any problem, I don't mind taking out that particular one from the list.
I would be more comfortable taking it out.
Okay.
So Commissioner Whitley, would you care to amend your motion?
I will. I'd like to make a motion that we approve zoning application 2022-751 because it is consistent, that the rezoning is consistent with the land use plan, and it expands the commercial use along the Monroe Road corridor. Reasonable rezoning in that will not change the site, and keeping the other uses of corridor, and also taking out the photo, the copy photo process.
Copying also, or just photo processing?
Just photo processing.
Just photo processing.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Whitley, second by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to ask Commissioner Whitley to recuse himself from the next two items.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself from number 7 and number 8.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitley. Item 7, zoning application 2022-754. CRC text amendment to change the text of the CRC district to allow independent living facilities, to establish required parking for independent living facilities in the CRC, and to allow an increase in the height limitations for independent living facilities in the CRC district. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is a zoning motion text amendment 2022-754. At the public hearing, it was requested that the parcels impacted in the CRC district and CRC2 be identified. So staff analyzed the CRC and CRC2 parcels that are currently in those zoning districts. And there's only one parcel that is over 4 acres that would support an independent living facility. Of course, it is possible that multiple parcels can be combined to create a 4-acre or greater parcel. But any independent living facility would be required to be reviewed by the board and approved by the town board. So we don't have that many large CRC zoned properties. Turn the page, excuse me. Staff recommendation, the recommended motion is to approve zoning motion 2022-754 UDO text amendment as submitted with the change from 53 feet to 50 feet. And the petitioner, oops, wrong one. Petitioner doesn't have to agree to that. This is a text amendment.
I'll make a motion to approve zoning motion 2022-754 UDO text amendment as submitted with the change from 53 feet to 50 feet. And it is consistent. The text amendment is consistent with the land use plan because it will provide another zoning district to permit senior independent living housing, which is encouraged as a way to diversify housing types. And it is reasonable because it's reasonable in that it provides for the opportunity for senior housing at a greater density in the CRC zoning district, but continues to place a minimum acreage cap on its project size.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem McCool. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll move on to the next item, zoning application 2022-755. That's why Commissioner Whitley had that number on his mind. Mariah Senior Living to change the conditions in that certain CRC2 district, more particularly described as 381 Crestdale Road, 407 Crestdale Road, and 415 Crestdale Road, and also identified as tax parcels 215-021, 11, 15, and 50 to allow senior adult living units. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we all know, bringing affordable housing to Matthews is a goal that has been expressed over a number of years. The trade-off with this project is a 4-story residential structure that is in striking contrast to the existing neighborhood. Scale and community fit is a possible concern. And these are some things we heard from the public hearing. It was unanimously recommended for approval by the planning board at their April 26th regular meeting. And so the recommended motion is, although technical requirements have been met based on some of those concerns about the height, scale, massing, et cetera, the board may want to consider postponement if they would like these things to be formally addressed by the applicant prior to a decision. The applicant is here this evening and would be able to address any concerns or questions that the board may have.
Rob, before you leave, again, this is not a conditional rezoning. So this is purely, in other words, once we do this, it's by right. Is that correct?
This is a conditional zoning district overall. So any changes in the CRC zoning district are conditional. This is a change to a previously approved master site plan. So this is what we refer to as change in conditions. Because it's not actually changing the zoning district. It's just changing the conditions on the site. And it is a conditional zoning.
Well, to be more specific with my
Sorry.
question, is part of that condition the architectural appearance as well, not necessarily the height?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Before Mr. Cochran speaks, I want to let the public and of course all the elected board members know that what we're voting on tonight is totally independent of any funding. And there's been some concerns raised to me of late that there may be an ask of the town to possibly use some of our ARPA funding or other funds to help support this. And we're not addressing that tonight. This is totally independent of any funding. To be totally transparent, it is likely after consultation with our town attorney that it probably will not make sense for us to use ARPA funds to help fund this building. And I have discussed that with Mr. Cochran independently, as well as with Commissioner Whitley. So Mr. Cochran, if you want to approach the podium there, I'm sure there's probably some questions. Or if you would like to say anything, sir, go ahead.
Yes, just to acknowledge, because the question has come up kind of in some of the conversations with commissioners, that we use a variety of public and private financing sources to achieve affordability when we do developments like this. And we have planned to request funding from the town of Matthews, but we recognize this development moving forward is not contingent on receiving funding from the town of Matthews. And we don't consider a zoning approval as an endorsement for funding for the development. In our minds, the zoning, as Mayor said, the zoning and the funding request process are independent of each other. So I did want to just acknowledge that from our perspective. We do plan to ask for the funding, but we recognize those are two separate and distinct processes. Thank you.
I have a question. I know we're not discussing that tonight, but could this development be built with zero ARPA funds from the town of Matthews?
It could. I would say it would affect it. It could make it harder for us to go for other funding sources. It will make it more difficult and could affect relative levels of affordability. I always say affordable housing is a math problem. The more public and favorable financing you get, the better mix of incomes you can serve. So but we're committed to making sure the development moves forward regardless.
And what is that level of affordability? Everyone is different. Is it an AMI question? Is it what does that look like?
It is. It's just a matter of, as we've mentioned, the funding can serve anything from 30 to 80% AMI. When it comes down to the vast majority of the funding would come from other sources. It would be the relative number of units at the different AMI levels. It's hard to get into kind of exactly how many, because that all becomes how much funding, as we look for funding from other sources, how much we get from them versus others is kind of how but we're committed to serving those AMI levels.
Gotcha.
It's just how many at each.
Affordability is relative. If you're on that 80% AMI, that's not as significant if you're at 50. And so we want to make sure that if we are committed to building affordable housing, which is one of the biggest things that I ran on, and a main reason why I like serving on this board is I like to advocate for affordable housing. But this is a big step, and I want to make sure that we're not on the highest end of being quote affordable. I want to make sure that we're putting together a good product that's going to be affordable and set the tone for future developments.
Agreed.
Mayor Pro Tem, I know in speaking with Mr. Cochran that we've discussed rents possibly as low as $400 a month, going up to $1,200, I believe, something like that. So certainly I'm really excited about this development because I think it's our first real substantial foray into affordable housing. And it's not, like you say, 80% API on 3 units for 5 years or something. This is a long-term commitment for truly affordable housing in Matthews. So it's very exciting.
That is very exciting. Music to my ears.
Mr. Cochran, even though this is in a CRC area, we need to make it clear to the public this is not a CRC, correct?
Yeah, I believe the CRC is referring to the Crestdale is the Crestdale zoning district. CCRC is the community.
CCRC. Yes,
Continuing
I
care
wanna-
retirement
I want
community.
to make
Yes.
sure the public knew the difference.
Yes,
right?
we are definitely not
Okay.
building a CCRC.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
And I guess the only other thing that I would suggest, I know building height massing has been a concern. It's the one we've heard. And I know we worked hard over the last week to try to create, it was hard. Luckily with all the big trees around, it's hard to create something that tried to give you a scale. And I know emailed something earlier today to try to give you a sense for how the building kind of fits back so far back from the road that, and with some 50-foot trees, it does, we think fits pretty well. And hopefully that helps allay any concerns. So.
This may, with it being 92 units, what's the average square foot per space?
A 1-bedroom is going to be 660 to 700 square feet, and a 2-bedroom is going to be between 900 and 1,000 square feet.
And it goes up to a max of 2 bedrooms.
Yeah,
perfect.
no 3 bedrooms, just
Awesome.
2 bedrooms.
No, this will, oh, I'm sorry. Was that?
Commissioner
Okay,
Tufano.
thank you. Was this, again, you'll be bringing back renderings in the future? No?
I think no, the
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, so this is why I asked before about the by right. Okay, so I love the project. I'm all for it. The building itself, because it's 4 stories high, to me needs to be more attractive than what it is right now. I think Commissioner Urban brought this up in the last meeting about how it needed to have more like porches or green space or whatever the case may be. The question I think is, do we get what we see tonight?
I don't want to answer from a technical perspective. I want to be careful and be corrected because the site plan is a conditional. So the building has to be where it is. So it's a conditional site plan, the building setback, where the parking is, how we've preserved the front along Crestdale for open space and future development. But I don't think the building itself is conditional. In the sense of we have shown a rendering, but that's not, well, I'm gonna let you.
Sure. No, I can step in here. I can step in here. And I think Jay's bringing up the elevations now. But these elevations would be a part of the conditional package that have been submitted as is the site plan.
So the ones that we saw in the 1st of April are the ones that is what we expect to be built there. That's what it's going to look like. Am I hearing that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
There they are. Thank you, Jay.
Are there any further questions, comments, or motions?
Commissioner Urban.
So Lee, it would really insightful to have mentioned your LIHTC entitlement in the public hearing. I know it doesn't, you see them as 2 separate things, but I was sort of taken back when I thought it was a fully entitled project and you said, well, we'll still have the ask, and you caught me off guard. And I think the mayor has stipulated, and Mr. Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that you didn't feel that the ARPA funds are part of this discussion, and they aren't, but I mean, you're saying that moving forward, that's probably not something we would consider, because it's kind of putting me in a box a little bit from that standpoint. And I wish we had known a little bit sooner, and then we could have had a little bit better discussion about how this goes. Being in the same business you are, it was my fault. I should have said, hey, Lee, is this fully entitled, or is there more skin in the game? And it did catch me off guard. But I think if we're talking about the project as a whole, just the project, I am supportive of it. I was hoping that maybe you would do something more on the green space side of things. I know you got the little porch here and a little porch there. We talked about another solution. Is it possible that you could incorporate Juliet balconies for this particular project? It's not a full porch. It's, gives the person an opportunity to open the door, not fall out, so to speak. But is that something that we might be able to qualm Commissioner Tufano's concerns and give me a win here, you know, a little bit, because I think people really enjoy being able to sort of open up a door or a window and not necessarily have a full porch.
Yeah.
Take out your calculator.
No.
Come on.
It is, and we are careful in our world of making sure if we provide it for one, we provide it for others. That's generally why we don't do all balconies on seniors. I don't think a Juliet would fall into that.
Correct.
We could do some Juliets to break up and kind of give it without doing it on
There
every
we
single
go.
unit. And yes,
Okay.
I think we could look at that.
Excuse me, for
Wanna answer
the benefit of us non-architects, can you explain what a Juliet is? I know Romeo and Juliet, but I don't know.
No, Juliet was on the balcony. Romeo was down there on the ground. A Juliet balcony is really just a decorative balustrade or guardrail that allows you to have a window or door that's large enough that you can open up for fear of falling out. But if you want to sort of step out 3 inches, so to speak, it gives the feeling of a porch without having a porch.
You would not be able to step out.
You would
on-
not step out.
You would
onto
not
it.
be able to step out.
It
onto
just
it.
allows you to have more
Okay.
expression.
I
What's
know what
that?
you're talking about. I understand. Thank you.
Prevents people from falling to the.
Yes, it prevents people from falling. Correct.
And just, I would like to answer the other question. So, and this is sometimes language, and if I erred, I apologize. I've never thought of tax credits as entitlements. Essentially, tax credits are a funding source. So just like I've actually was trained when I present at zonings to not talk about financing. So if I erred there, I apologize, but right. Because in our entitlements means zoning, and financing is just like a market rate development. You don't necessarily have your construction loan approved when you get your zoning. You get your zoning and then you go for your financing. So that was no intention to delay it, but just, yeah.
And that's fine. They're just, I gotta be sensitive to things. We're just talking about affordable housing. We've made some commitments to ARPA.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, a project pops up and the numbers sync up and all this stuff. And I get very cautious about that from that aspect of it. So that deliberation is a separate deliberation for this board. And that's up to the board at that aspect of it. But overall, we're going to do the Juliet balconies. If you're all comfortable with 4 stories, I think it's still a little too overwhelming, but I'm supportive from that aspect of it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tufano.
Rob, just a yes or no answer. Other than the Juliet balconies, do we get what we see in these renderings tonight?
That's it. WYSIWYG. What
That's
you see is
it.
what you get.
That's it, huh?
Yes.
So other than minor tweaks, Lee, this is Mr. Cochran, this is it.
This is it. Yes.
And
Any tweak will be for the better.
To Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem Poole's question, if you don't get additional public funding, is this project in jeopardy?
We've gotten off on the financing, and we really shouldn't be discussing that during this public hearing. This is a land use regulation public hearing. Their financing is really not of any concern to the board at this point whatsoever.
Stand corrected. I withdraw my question.
Well, with that said, I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we approve zoning application 2022-755 because it is consistent. The change in zoning conditions is consistent with the land use plan because the town should provide an array of housing types, densities, and locations, and it is reasonable. The change in zoning is reasonable, and that will add more affordable housing to the town of Matthews, which makes me very happy.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Garner. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Commissioner Whitley, you can rejoin our meeting, and I hear some clapping there. I have some of my friends there from Mount Moriah in the audience, I understand. So Mr. Whitley, you're back in the meeting. We'll go on to the next one. Next
Thank you.
zoning application 2022-756 Lemma Townhomes to change the zoning.
Yes, in this case, the applicant realized that she had a lot of work to do. And she would like to withdraw the application so that she can do that work and come back with a better project. So,
And we
Anybody like to make a motion?
You know, we just move to accept the withdrawal. How about it?
I move that we accept the withdrawal of zoning application 2022-756.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Garner, second by Commissioner McCool. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously with me voting affirmative as well. We'll move on to item 10. Motion 2022-1-I1 text amendment to amend the existing UDO text to allow a limited amount of outdoor storage in the I-1 zoning district. Ms. Bennett.
Just as a reminder, this came about because we have a number of violations in the I-1 zoning district where they have outdoor storage. It's not the reason necessarily that we suggested this language, though. There are other communities that allow a limited amount of outdoor storage in I-1 zoning, and we feel that it makes the businesses more viable. So since the public hearing, we changed the text amendment just slightly to limit the height of the storage and to require that the outdoor storage be organized and well-maintained. And obviously that means that people are going to have to look at it and determine whether it's organized and well-maintained. There was a question that came up in the public comments about the downtown overlay and outdoor storage in the downtown overlay. And Jay, could you bring up the zoning map? Right. So the gray there is the I-1. And as you can see, we have a fair amount of I-1 zoning within the downtown overlay. Most of it is right up against 51. But yes, we do have, and there are a number of properties in there, I think, that are in violation right now. But yes, there are a number of properties that are in the downtown overlay. We still feel that those businesses exist, and it will help them to be allowed to have some, again, a limited amount of outdoor storage that is screened and well-maintained.
Do you anticipate that this will cause an excess of work for code enforcement, or do you think will be well within their purview and be able to handle it?
I think it was causing work anyway, the ones that were in violation. So I would say it's probably about a wash, and maybe an improvement.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mr. Tavano.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Thank you. I don't see anything in the text amendment regarding the percentage of the outdoor storage with respect to the main building or with respect to the
It's 25%.
Total acreage.
It's not based on acreage. It's based on the number one on the standards. Outdoor storage area may not exceed 25% of the total footprint of all buildings on the property, up to a maximum of 10,000 square feet. And I did earlier, if you have that map, if anyone wants to see it, did a map showing kind of what that looks like on the ground. So
Right.
yes, it's not based on the acreage of the property. It's based on the square footage of the building.
And any restrictions on how far that outdoor storage has to be from the main building? Or from any offsets from property lines or anything of that nature?
We will review it on case by case, I believe. I mean, I don't. All right. Located to the rear and side of the principal structure and outside of the required setback. So yes, that does limit it. And a screening plan.
Okay.
And
so-
again, we'll see each of these as they come in to approve them.
Okay, so basically it's 25% of the main building, no higher than 20 feet.
Correct.
All right. No limits on what the actual construction has to be or anything of that nature?
No.
No. Okay.
I've previously spoke of my support for this text amendment because I think it benefits our businesses. However, we've had at least two speakers, Mr. Martin at the public hearing and Mr. Meyer tonight, to raise a concern about the overlay district downtown. I would just like to get a commitment from our town manager that code enforcement will check this and make sure that it's well maintained and organized. We don't want, stuff that looks really sloppy out. So I think our public comments have brought up some good points. I think that it's essential that we allow it, but it's got to be well maintained and organized in some sort, and we need to check on that pretty regularly.
I have one more question. How did all these buildings currently in the I-1 district get out of compliance? Was that, did we change the UDO after they were constructed?
I would imagine it was just kind of creep. That they put a few things outside, then they put a few more things outside, and
nobody was there to correct it. I mean, as far as the town was concerned.
there were, yes, we were working with property owners. That's part of the reason that we're here today, is working on property owners on how they could come into compliance.
Just a technicality. When did this come in when did this become an issue?
Jay? I think so, last fall. I'm sure it was floating around before then.
And that was because of a citizen complaint or another home landowner adjacent to them, something of that nature?
Something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Urban.
So Nadine, how do you screen something that's 20 feet high?
I guess that's what they have to show us.
But are we willing to have screen?
Honestly, that was an arbitrary number. I would imagine if you can drop that number down.
Here's my, I don't think it, in interior conditions, if we go over 12 feet, it's considered high piled storage. So there's a reason why they limited 12 feet. My recommendation is, because the racks go in those sort of increments, is if we could limit that to 12 feet. I think
absolutely. I think
you
that's
could screen
reasonable.
that with Leland cypresses and do things. What I like about, I'm not happy, we've done this before. It's sort of like bending the rules to the people who have broken the rules, but you got to give them a chance. I get it. And we can always change this.
Mhm.
But I like the fact that you have item number 5, they had to submit a plan. So they have to meet, again, they have to meet conditions,
Correct.
basically. So I could see.
And
how
we have
that-
to know that they're out there too. I think that's
Exactly.
important.
So, I mean, I feel better about it as opposed to just having these conditions and they just go off and do what they want. But I would like, if you're going to proceed with this, I'd like the store goods not to exceed 12 feet. I mean, we don't have a Lowe's condition. They got the 20-foot racks and stuff like that. But if we're going to screen it, the screening could be worse than the stored product. So I wouldn't want to go too high.
I think that's very reasonable, 12 feet.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Urban?
I didn't say anything about it. I just said I wanted the height to be 12 feet.
Before we move to, I have a question too. So I'm not familiar with what the county dictates on this, but only vaguely familiar that several years ago, I remember the Catawba, I guess, river keepers started urging companies to move their fertilizer into covered storage, not indoor storage, but just, some sort of, so this is broadly outdoor storage. Are there any restrictions on what would be, I guess there's 2 questions. Are there restrictions on what would be stored outdoors?
There wouldn't be no restrictions.
The second question is that something that the county, are you aware of the county having restrictions on? So the idea, at that time was that storing stacks of fertilizer in bags runs off into streams and pollutes the groundwater. If there's not a cover on it, I would have some concern about that being an issue if we're allowing maybe a landscape company to have outdoor storage.
That would be up to you. I know that the city of Charlotte doesn't have any restrictions on what it can be. That's all I can refer to.
There are certain state and federal regulations regarding outdoor storage. EPA, for instance, regulates some things. You can't put, contaminated scrap that's going to have runoff. There's EPA regulations, but I don't know about the specifics on fertilizer. But I imagine there's a whole lot of things that could potentially have that effect, and so we have the ability to review the plans or staff does, that would be helpful to look at those sort of things.
Some of this may fall under the fire marshal because storage and toxins, flammables, corrosives, et cetera, fall under them, under NFPA and the fire code. So it's possible as well. I don't know as precisely, but if you've got tank farms of chemicals outside, they regulate it. So I would assume if there's fertilizer, it can go boom or corrode things where there's probably some regulation there. I would think that that's regulated someplace down the right road that the mayor is speaking to, but I know the fire marshal in Mecklenburg County does have jurisdiction over some exterior storage.
I think it's also noteworthy that as far as I know, Home Depot and Lowe's and Matthews don't store fertilizer outdoors. It's always covered. And there's probably a reason for that.
Right. That's, I think, the river keepers kind of advocated for that. And before we make a decision, I would like to have answers on if there are restrictions on this, and then if we could guide planning into urging business owners to have covered areas for certain types of storage.
So you're looking for more information on who regulates overall what can be stored outside if it's not Matthews?
Correct. Yeah. And if there's room for in the planning department to encourage safe storage, when you're reviewing.
I understand, Commissioner Garner, what your ask is, but I think the list could become quite exhaustive. I mean, asking planning to consider every possible product that you could, what regulation there is on any, infinite number of things beyond fertilizer. I mean, are you only concerned about fertilizer? I mean, there's, chemicals in barrels or, salt. I don't know, just all kind of things. Is this something that planning staff feels comfortable with, that you can come back with some sort of guidance? Jay?
Why don't you contact Jeff Wright, who is the fire marshal for the city of Charlotte, and talk to them about corrosives, combustibles, chemicals, and he may be able to point you at least in the general direction, because I think those things have to be covered. I know when we get involved with it, we have drainage systems that capture the water and they go into cisterns and do different things, and then the water is tested before it goes out. But you're going pretty elaborate, but start with the fire marshal because they like to get into this kind of stuff. I don't know why, but anyway.
They like to get into fertilizer.
Well, there used to be a whole system called MSDS, the Material Safety Data Sheets. I think they've named it something else now.
They'll want those. Yep.
So that has like every chemical on earth, and part of those sheets that the government requires tells you what you have to do for safe storage and disposal. So maybe we could, use that as guidance as well, because I think those sheets are on like every chemical that there is, just about.
We can bring back more information.
Why couldn't we just put something in our ordinance that's subject that any materials to be stored outside must also be in compliance with state and federal regulations on outside storage?
Sounds good to me.
That's why we've got him.
But I mean, we don't need to put all these technical languages in our local ordinances. Just storage materials stored outdoors must also be in compliance with state and federal regulations.
That would make me feel better. I just would like to have some sort of assurance that we're not contributing to.
And if there's a question on whether that is federally or state regulated, we'll just put the burden on the federal and state regulators to come in and take a look at it.
Yes, so we have a new number 6.
Yeah.
The materials stored outside must be in compliance with state or federal regulations.
Correct.
That's Renee's motion.
Yeah, and I might add that you might also want to say county, because there's probably some county regulations as well.
State.
Well, exactly. Any other governmental regulations that regarding outside storage.
Becky, you can go ahead and pay the attorney this month. All right, does that satisfy your concerns, Commissioner Garner?
I guess I'll make the motion to approve zoning application 2022-1 text amendment to allow outdoor storage in I-1 zoning with the height being limited to 12 feet, and it is compliant with all government
Other government
regulations
regulations.
as Nadine's
State.
as a state, federal, and county regulations, and it's reasonable. The zoning the zoning text amendment is consistent with the land use plan in that it supports light industrial uses, and the zoning text amendment is reasonable in that it allows only a limited amount of outdoor storage while still supporting light industrial uses.
Can I make one clarification on that? I think we need to say governmental regulations that are appropriate to Matthews. In other words, we're not going to enforce, a regulation that's for Cleveland, Ohio. Right? I mean, because you said all governmental regulations. Somebody say, hey, in Cleveland, you can't do that.
It would be state, federal, or Mecklenburg County regulations.
Right.
The reason I think Mecklenburg County we want is because of the fire marshal's office and the storage of the combustibles and other hazardous materials and things. I know that the fire department's got the requirement for identifying what's on the. Yes. But that was invented by a Charlotte firefighter, by the way. That so that it went international, but that's neither here nor there.
Mr. Buckley, would you stick to the arguments here?
Yeah. But I think that if you just leave it to that, then we don't have to worry about what some other state has done.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do I need to
That's fine.
specifically say Mecklenburg County in my motion?
I would say Mecklenburg County.
I will amend that to say state, federal, and Mecklenburg County regulations.
Yes.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem McCool, a second by Commissioner Whitley. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? I vote affirmative. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know the next two gentlemen, Gordon Miller and David Ross, were chomping at the bit to comment on our last discussion. We're going to get a Environmental Advisory Committee update from Mr. Ross and Mr. Miller.
Okay. We've been sitting back there going, there are a lot of regulations that you're unaware of. Specifically, Commissioner Gardner, you're asking about the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, which is required of all facilities that store materials, hazardous materials of any kind. And there is an opportunity for it to become part of stormwater. Those plans are required by federal regulation and have been for years. Under the, mentioned the fire marshal, if you store hazardous materials above certain quantities, it depends on what the material is. On the end, it's actually April 1st, you're required to submit data to the fire marshal in each community, whoever that fire marshal may be, depending on where you are in the country, about the quantities, where they're stored, how they're stored. Are they stored under pressure? Are they stored without pressure? Are they stored in quantity? How much is the quantity? There's an awful lot of reporting that is being done that is out there that we don't have to duplicate. Okay. And you get into other things. David was commenting, he was whispering in my ear, NPDS permits, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits. Depending on what you've got and how you do it, the NPDS permit might be required for that site and that facility. I can speak the fact that I've written many stormwater pollution prevention plans. I've submitted what's called Tier 1 reports across the nation. I've submitted Tier 2 reports, which are actual discharge estimates. Those are due on July 1st every year. That information is available on the internet through EPA, and you can find out who in the town of Matthews is discharging, what they're discharging specifically in chemicals. How is it going out? Is it going out air, water, through waste? And how is it being managed, particularly on the water and the waste side, so it does not have an impact out there. There's a plethora of regulation out there on that. So the county is involved because they're reporting through the county. The state is involved because you have to submit Tier 1 and Tier 2 reports through the state to the feds. And then much of that is out there on the internet that's readily available. You just go to EPA, go to TRI, Toxic Release Inventory, put in your zip code, 28105, and it'll ask you a couple questions about who do you want, and you will find out what's going on in the community. Now, there's a big problem with some of this, and that is, I remember specifically, I sat on a local emergency planning committee for Lancaster County, South Carolina, and it speaks specifically to the topic of fertilizer. We had a large farm operation that refused to submit their data. And we had to order them to do it. That kind of thing has to happen too. And you heard a little bit of how do we find these people? Sometimes it's very difficult to find the people that are involved because they will, in some way, shape, or form, make it difficult for you to find them. And that's a challenge that's sitting out there also. Now, our industrial base here in Matthews is not significant compared with other locations around the area and in the immediate area. And for those of you who want to look up stuff, find out how many people have complained about Charlotte Pipe and Plastic. I do want to comment going back, and Mr. Buckley and I were speaking to this subject during the break. Back during the late 1990s and very early O's, we were working on dealing with the medical waste incinerator that was in fact operating. We figured out through federal regulation how to make that a non-issue. And they were, ultimately they lost their air permit. With that, losing their air permit, they were not allowed to operate. So these are the kinds of things that it can be very complex, but there's also an awful lot of regulation out there that is in place and has been in place. On the tier 1 and tier 2 reports, those came in the early 1980s. So people have been submitting those since the early 1980s. Pardon me?
Late 80s.
No, it was early 80s because I remember submitting them because I had to do them by hand. Excuse me, I had to do them. We didn't have computers back then.
That's the Union Carbide.
Yeah, it was based on the Union Carbide Bhopal situation. We needed to find out what was where. It's the same questions you're asking right now. What and where? Well, that information is out there on the web. And one other plan I didn't comment about, I don't believe we have one in the town of Matthews. It's called a risk management plan. If you have certain materials of certain quantities, and Commissioner Urban, you're talking about flammables, combustibles, and well, basically toxics, corrosives, whether they be acids or bases, you have to have a risk management plan which outlines specifically how you're going to deal with a discharge of those materials should that occur. Again, I don't believe we have it, but one of the things that was interesting, I wrote one of those plans for a client up in Tennessee. We had to describe the blast area for that particular flammable material. It was 1/3 of a mile in all directions. And we had to notify all the people who were within 1/3 of a mile. So things like that, and whether people are keeping up with that information and whatever, I don't know, because I've been retired for 8 years. Thank you, Charlie. So I don't keep track of that, but there are specific plans out there to make these kinds of things that you're talking about very much part of the community understanding what's going on. This really was very different than what I wanted to talk about. Excuse me for taking a thing.
Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead and give us your committee.
Yeah, and I'm famous for my PowerPoint presentations.
Push the right ear, point this way. I think you should be able to.
We're this way?
Doesn't work.
Okay. The battery may be dying. So environmental actions for smarter growth, something that you've been talking about all evening. Yeah, you're gonna have to do it. Okay. How can we do this? And we really need to focus on trying to do this through zoning and development, because what we're talking about is smarter growth, and that's what zoning and development is all about. Now, some things that we've been working on over the years, next slide, please. For example, this, which happens to be something you have right there. This is something we created. It took us a while to get it through the process, but we have to understand that we are going through new growth and we are going to go through a lot of renovation, regrowth. I happened to be in a community a couple of weeks ago where I watched a lot of tearing down going on. The housing was 50 years old or thereabouts. It's now going through tear downs and we're upgrading on what's going on. So the rebuild is there. How do we make that begin to happen? How do we do that? Next slide, please. Well, we've created a simple bifold which points out better environmental management under today's standards. We've aimed it at town and developers. Others can use it for any purpose that's there, but the key is getting the project to the smartest growth for Matthews. And Commissioner Urban, you mentioned about raising the bar. I think we need to be thinking about what the bar looks like in Matthews. And your comment, I just happened to have driven by the Carrie Hendrick thing a couple weeks ago. And I took a look at that and I said, this is not Independence Boulevard. This is something much, much better. Yes, you can buy a car there, but it is a much better facility or series of facilities to be part of that particular community and aiming at that. So what we've got is we've got something that's there. I'll put it in perspective in just a moment as to the where part it'll fit in. What's it cover? Next slide. Things like energy management, stormwater. One of the things I was looking at very carefully as one of the items that you were going through, there was an awful lot of hard surface on that particular piece of property. That hard surface is going to create, in the stormwater world, we call it volume and velocity. It's the volume of water, which is not going to be absorbed into the current forested whatever, but it's going to be running off that property in some way, shape, or form. And it's going to take a fair amount of velocity because we need to evacuate as things develop in terms of the quantities of water. We're getting heavier rainstorms. We're going to need to be thinking about the stormwater issue. Commissioner Gardner, you mentioned about the Catawba Watery Water Management Group. I've been participating in that for a while now, and we are concerned about that. All up and down, from up in the mountains down to Lake Watery, and it heads off to the Cooper River down in Charleston. And how many people are eating, drinking, and whatever, all of that's water that we're using, and we're having this stuff go right through. This stuff is not being managed. It's being volume and velocity into the Catawba River Basin, except we've got a little bit of Matthews that actually goes into the PD side. Interesting enough there. Solid waste management, noise, that came up a little bit earlier also. How do we keep it? I enjoy the comment about putting up a few trees. That's not going to do it. That never has done it. It's not going to do it. I hear that and I go, no, the acoustics are just not going to work for you. Air quality issues. Keep in mind here in Mecklenburg County and in the surrounding area, we're an attainment area for everything right now, but we're right on the edge. And lastly, things like interior water use, potable water use, and management of potable water. I'll go right back to the Catawba Watery Water Management thing. We've done some work on it. For those of you who are going to be here at 2050, we're going to run out of water. The river will run dry. Now, I'm not going to be here. That would make me 102 years old. Chances are I will not make it. But the answer is we have to be thinking about how we're managing the use of water, because we simply cannot go without thinking about that and using it or reusing it for better situations. Sprinkler water. Now, thanks to the mayor, I sit on the Charlotte Water Citizens Advisory Board, and we're working on ideas of how to take gray water, which is stuff that's been through the system a little bit, and bringing it back into other uses that may be available in the community. For example, sprinkler water, for using it in that sprinkler zone. Next slide, please. Okay, how to use them. These are solid ideas. They're idea spurring, or thinking about neighborhood impacts, things you've been talking about. We want to make sure that we're thinking broadly about what's going on. And again, how can we use it? Town developers, redevelopers, others can use those ideas. Next slide, please. Okay, have available what we're looking for, available within government, available outside of government, and for others to use. Next slide, please. We also have something, we created this relatively recently. One of you, and I can't remember which one of you requested it.
Commissioner Gardner.
Commissioner Gardner, okay, you did it through David. And this is really aimed at town council. If you'll notice, it's got a little different format. It's got some more things in it than we have for the developer side of things. Again, idea spurring. And what we're trying to do is getting people involved in how to look at activities that are being created. And you're doing that. What we need to do is make sure we're comprehensive about it, so that we're not aiming at just one thing, but we're aiming at a comprehensive environmental issue. Keep in mind, it's air, water, waste, it's land use. Those are the things that make up the environment. and take a breath and you've got it. And you're thinking about it. Next slide, please. Okay. Giving you a bit of a beyond that of the developer document. So you've got some other things that you can add in. We really can't legislate, for example, energy management right now. We don't have that as an option, but it's something you can ask. And David presented that a little bit earlier with the comment about we have the wonderful situation with the roofs that are available. Can they be managed by putting some solar cells and stuff on the roof? You can heat water also very successfully that way. That's smarter growth, isn't it? Because we're taking electricity from Matthews and using it in Matthews, which might be a much better approach than buying it or purchasing it through Duke Energy. Next slide, please. Okay, aimed a little bit differently. We've got something that we're talking about putting onto the ordinance, or not into the ordinance, but into the application process. Mayor Higdon, this is something that came out of discussions that we had with Jay and his group about what's going on. This is a draft document, so please understand that we're still working on this, and the EAC has not finally approved this. But what it does is it outlines for the developers and others what the ordinances we already have in place. And simple things like, now going back to solid waste a few moments ago, we have in the noise ordinance that solid waste can only be collected certain hours of the day within 100 yards of a occupied residence. So we have those kinds of things in place, and we need to make sure that they are being followed. I've in fact reported a few things through Carlo about people in the middle of the night when I'm out walking, banging around big old bins in the neighborhoods. They're right adjacent to a neighborhood, and the residents are sitting there listening to it as I am walking down the street. This is the kind of stuff that we've got to be taking a look at and saying, is this the right way we want to have Matthews grow? And as we grow things, we've got to make sure that we've got that. So it'd be part of the application process to make sure that they are complying with. Now, a comment in there, some of this is actually separate ordinances. For example, there's the lighting ordinance, there's the noise ordinance. We've got some stuff in the water ordinance, but there are also some stuff that's in the UDO, which applies to this same thing. Some of which you brought up again tonight. Well, we need to make sure that they are presenting that before you have to ask the question. Wouldn't it be better not to have to ask the question and have them present it? And I was listening very carefully to some of the discussion about one of the items, and I sit there and I think about clear cutting property and putting 4-inch diameter trees in its place. That's really not doing a very good job of managing the situation. We've got mature trees, let's use them. Let's bring them into place because they're going to do a whole lot more in terms of things like stormwater management. They're going to be able to suck up more. They're also going to be able to keep the area cooler. And we're always thinking about this wonderful thing called climate change. We're trying to look and make sure that we keep the quantity of tree coverage relatively the same. Otherwise, we're participating in climate change. Why? Because we're cutting down the trees that provide the cooling underneath where we do the measurement of the heat. We've got to be thinking about those kinds of things. Jay, next slide, please. Okay, so what are we talking about? Smarter planning. The bifold, that's basically for the project to begin with. Hey, everybody, remember things like that. And keep in mind, we're talking about stuff that maybe not quite in regulation yet, but potable water should be showing up pretty soon. Next one, that's the application process. We get that going on, and then finally the council approval. And you've got a checklist there to start working on. And that's what we're aiming for in terms of what's happening as part of project approval. And Commissioner Tufano, I'll keep answering questions for you on what that means in terms of what's going on. Jay, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm going to give you a chance to ask us a lot of questions and go right ahead and throw them at us. A comment, David brings this up. On our committee, we have just 4 at the moment, but we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 to 140 years of environmental experience. I possess somewhere well past 40, closing in on 50 now. This is what I've done for a career. I started out with the first Earth Day back in 1970 and have been working at it ever since. We have quite a bit of expertise. We have a lawyer on there who's an environmental lawyer. So we have these kinds of expertise issues that you can talk about. And stormwater pollution prevention plans, having written many, I know what it's all about.
We
Because-
also helped develop the Mecklenburg County Stormwater Ordinance.
Yes, we
In
did.
fact, we had developed a Matthews ordinance. We had developed a Matthews ordinance. Mecklenburg County then went out and distributed ours, Huntersville's, and Davidson's to the other jurisdictions to say, we like these. In fact, I know the city of Charlotte, when they revised theirs before we had a countywide ordinance, they used our ordinance as a basis. Just thinking about what's in the documents that we presented and Mount Moriah's Senior Living Center, do you realize that there's a factory just on the other side of the property line? The box plant, not to mention the transcontinental plant just across the street. Have you considered the noise and the impact of that noise on your residents? Noise is something that people don't often consider. They will build a residential establishment, and then the residents complain. And who's guilty? Well, of course, the municipality isn't guilty. They just approved what could be approved. Ends up the business that's been there for decades has to do something in addition because a residential development was approved right next door. Something to be considered when approving zoning or reviewing zonings.
What are the numbers? There's a lot in there. There's a lot of detail in the, for example, the noise ordinance that David was talking about. For example, it's 55 after 10 o'clock at night. That's decibels A scale slow weighting, or A scale weighting slow response. That goes until 6:30 in the morning, depending on daylight savings time and Eastern Standard Time. So there's an awful lot in these ordinances that we have that need to be looked at to make sure that these are not issues. I'll give you one quick example. We had a fun one on this one. Somebody decided to go off grid in one of the neighborhoods here and brought in an industrial generator, which they ran all night. Could you imagine that one? The noise ordinance took over. That was the end of that. And by the way, you can get permits to do things. For example, Butler High School gets their permits every year for doing the football games. So they can go past the time limits on certain things. We have checked and we do a concert at the Stumptown Park to make sure that the neighbors don't have excessive levels. That's why the stage area is aimed in a certain direction. It's not aimed back to the community. It's aimed back to our downtown area. So things like that all fit into smart growth. But we need to be thinking about that in a very, very big way.
Any questions from any
Please,
elected
John.
officials for Gordon or David? Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. Thank you, gentlemen, for that update. And I think you've put forth some really good ideas. Maybe we need to have more of a consideration of environmental issues when we through our whole process. And to Commissioner Garner's point, some of the issues that we have now with former photo processing plants and other manufacturing plants may not have been so egregious if we'd had some sort of better planning back, in the 50s and 60s when those plants came into being. So thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time tonight.
Okay, I do have one request. I don't want to do this again on zoning night. You have to excuse me. I chaired this committee since 1989. And it seems like every time I get scheduled, it is zoning night.
Well, you have to compete with Corey's records.
So noted. We'll make sure that the next update's not on a zoning night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate all you do.
We do appreciate the fact that Jay in planning is working with us, or we are working with him to try to bring environmental issues to light at the beginning of the process, rather than catching it somewhere in the middle or not catching it at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to agenda item number 12, the consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda A through F5.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem McCool, second by Commissioner Garner. All in favor? Any in opposition? I vote in favor as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Unfinished business, item 13, consider purchase by installment financing of real property located at 137 South Fremont Street and authorize town manager to sign the closing documents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. This agenda item came before you last time in a slightly different format, where you took action to approve us moving forward with the sale of the property. But upon further review, it was discovered that because of the financing arrangement with this property, we needed to take a few additional steps. So earlier in the meeting, you held the public hearing that was required in order for the town to enter into this financing arrangement. And so this would be the related action now that that public hearing has been held that authorizes the town to enter into the financing arrangement that is described within the memo and authorizes the town manager to enter into all related contracts and sign off on closing documents in order to get this sale completed. And we also have the related budget amendment to allow us to make the additional down payment on the property of $20,000 should the board decide to move forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Is this two separate motions?
The motions can be made together. There's the two sentences that are up there at the end could be read in one, and then somebody can make a motion off of that.
Well, if there's no discussion, I would like to make a motion to approve the purchase of real property located at 137 South Fremont Street by installation financing as presented, and authorize the town manager to sign all related closing and financial documents. Do I continue on? Okay. Additionally, approve the related budgets amendments as presented that transfer $20,000 from the tourism fund balance to the general fund to be used as the down payment to the purchase of real property located at 137 South Fremont Street.
Second.
Sorry, who did the second? Mr. Urban?
Commissioner Urban.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Tofano, a second by Commissioner Urban. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. I believe we're to the mayor's report, correct? I just have two items. Mayor Pro Tem McCool mentioned Mary Jo Gulnitz in his prayer tonight, and of course, I think all of you know that she worked here for many years as a planner, and our thoughts and prayers are with her as she's going through the challenge of an illness. So please keep her in your thoughts. I also want to mention that on June 5th of this year at the Sportsplex, BAPS Charities or BAPS Charities will have their annual walk. And this year it's going to benefit Susan G. Komen and the Kiwanis Club of Matthews. And many of you have participated in that event in the past. I have for many years. It's a lot of fun. But MB further challenged me to bring 50 walkers with me. So I'm going to need your help to meet that goal. I have, would appreciate your help. It's a lot of fun. It's a great thing for the community, and BAPS Charities has done so much for Matthews. It's just almost unbelievable how much time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears that they put into our community. So I want to support them. Again, it's a lot of fun, and I know many of you have participated in the past. So please look into that. You can register at bapscharities.org and then /walkrun 2022 Charlotte. So please take a look at that. That's all I have. We'll go on to the town attorney. Your report, sir.
No report, Mayor.
And town manager's report.
No report.
Fantastic. Thank you for putting up with the technical difficulties we had this evening. I think we got through it all right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mark made that motion and I will second it.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Tufano, second by Commissioner Garner. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Good night.